to those who are going to be joining us online for this very important workshop. We are living in some perilous times. We are living in times where sacred places are not always honored anymore. Amen. We know there have been attacks on churches and all kind of sacred spaces, and so we want to be prepared. We're not saying that anything's going to happen. We're not trying to frighten you, but we want you to be prepared because we don't know what might be coming. And so today we are honored to have with us Mr. or Brother Aku Cromwell, who is the Director of Global Security for the Connectional AME Church. We spent yesterday with him going to 3 of our churches just to assess our safety level. What are things that we can improve? What are things we need to be aware of? And even though we only visited 3 churches, I think it gives us a global view of what all churches might need. So I'm done, and at this time, I am going to turn everything over to Mr. Cromwell. Can you just receive him, please?
Thank you, Elder. I appreciate that. Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, retired elder, sir. I appreciate everybody this morning. How's everybody feeling this morning? Outstanding, outstanding. Thank you. So I was actually just asking a moment ago. I'm not used to having it completely streamed live, so I was trying to figure out where my parameters were as far as movement here. And as I was expressing to the pastor, I'm not usually in the spotlight here, quite like he is. I know I appreciate that. So this morning, I wanted to come and speak with you all and give you all a little bit of information about security. And we'll switch over to the slide presentation in just one second so that we can go through that. But I know that one of the really important things whenever we're speaking or whenever we're listening to being presented to is understanding and having a bit of the background of the individual with whom you're speaking. So I will tell you first that I was not born into, but I have been raised in the AME church since a very young man. I actually have 3 pastors in my family who are all AME, and we are to the core. And I want to give you all a little bit about my background and my knowledge about security, because it was actually after 2015, after the Emanuel 9, that we had the conversation where I was sitting at a table, a restaurant, Piccadilly, I think it was actually, in Atlanta, and my father said to me, he said, "What would it take? What would be involved if you were to try to guide the AME church in the path and direction in order to provide security for us?" That's a big ask. And so I said, "How is it that we can do this best? How is it that we can approach this?" And so he said, "Well, you know, this is a serious question. I'm actually asking for the big picture of this." So if we can switch back over to the slide presentation, I'm going to give you a little bit about my background and what it is that's involved with this. So what we will talk about is who you all are and why you should be listening to me, and vice versa, because this is not just a one-way conversation. I realize that in the connection, in the global AME church, I give the analogy a couple of times that it's much like they said about the British Empire. The sun never sets on the AME church. We are actually all the way from India through the African continent, through the Caribbean, all the way over to the United States, and the 5th District, excuse me, as Bishop Brookins can attest to you all, we're going all the way from Missouri all the way over to Hawaii. So the sun is not setting on the AME church. At some point, there is always going to be sunlight on us. So what is it that we're going to accomplish here today? What is it specifically that I am here to be able to share with you all today? And how is it that you can put this to work for you all in your respective churches? So we will accomplish some things. Why is it important? And here in California, which is where our focus is this morning, why is it that we need this? What's going on here? Do we have issues with ICE? Do we have issues with other decisions that are going on in the government, judicial decisions that are being made? How does this affect us? And I know that some of you all are probably going to be saying, okay, well, once you understand a little bit about my background, how is it that I reasonably expect for you all to be implementing this and doing this? Well, we're going to have answers for all of that. We're going to put these pieces together, and we will have an actionable plan. I don't know if you know the difference between information and intelligence, but the word intelligence is actually information that can be used. It is actionable. It is stuff that you can put to good work. And then at the end, we're going to have a little bit of an open element because we almost always have a question of, okay, well, can you tell me how it is that we can make this work? How is it that we didn't cover this particular part, or I got this one special problem? And we will get all of these questions answered specifically for you. So we're going to work a little bit of that into the schedule. I apologize for our later start. I will consolidate. We will try to get a lot of information covered. You will see that the information that we are discussing here is actually a big volume of information. You're going to have some handouts that we're going to pass out to you all here. But everyone, however young, however more senior, more mature, everybody will come away from here with something that you can apply to your life individually and to your church in general. So everybody's coming away with something today. So a little bit about my background. I did work with diplomatic security. I have retired from the State Department. I was on Secretary Clinton and Secretary Rice's protective details. So as far as my background, a total of 31 years, 8 months, combined local, state, and federal law enforcement and investigations, and the topics that I've dealt with, everything from street patrol, gang units, burglary, robbery, homicide, all the rest of that. For people who, we joked around a little bit about it yesterday with the abbreviations and acronyms, counterterrorism, the intelligence community, counterintelligence and the intelligence community, counterintelligence issues, counterterrorism. I've dealt with all of these. And then I've been to 68 nations, lived in 3 for extended periods of time. I do speak several languages, but the AME Church is in 42 countries. So, for instance, when we had the Global Development Conference last February, I think it was, February in Maputo, Mozambique, we were down there and we were speaking and coordinating and facilitating there. So in 2027, CLO is also going to be over in Johannesburg. So my concern is not just here. My concern is with these bigger issues. And the issues are different in these different locations. So for instance, in Johannesburg, there is typically a higher rate of things like snatch and grab robberies, a higher rate of things like carjackings. So how do we deal with this? How do we keep people aware of what's going on in their surroundings? How do we travel as Americans going to these different environments and continue to be aware? What are the practices that we should use and be safe with, and how do these things differ? So all of this is what we try to go through and help people understand. So global security, me and my position when I came in here, I said, well, what we really need to do with the AME Church, how we need to help best is we need to coordinate when we have big issues, when we're at the general board, when we're at the general conference. Do we have issues that actually make the need for things like walk-through metal detectors like you see with TSA at the airports? And that's a little bit different than even the systems that we use that are incorporating things like you all here in the Bay Area are very familiar with AI. So part of what we use now are things like the Evolve or OpenGate systems, which are not looking for little tiny pieces of metal in your pocket, but they're looking like big and reasonable threats. So it actually does an analysis of your body, and we can get a lot more people going through, so it's more efficient. And at the same time, we can still detect the bigger threats. So that's the kind of stuff that we do. We liaise, we represent your interest also when we have threats, when we have prosecutions, when you don't have the police department perhaps responding in quite the way that you would like for them to be responding, I will reach out. I will coordinate and I will help. And I'll give you an example of that one later. We represent on your behalf and we train, just like I am right now. I am out here in order to do this. So there are others that actually work with me on that. There is a correlation right now. For those who are living in these United States, I don't think anybody is logging in online from outside the United States right now, But we have issues going on in these United States. We have issues politically. And there is a correlation to political and economic polarization when you have the haves and have-nots. And this has happened in cycles in the United States. When we see this, when we look at back almost 100 years ago, and I'm not quite that old, but I'm getting close. When we look back 100 years ago, we have the times of the Great Depression when people had more tension going on. And if you look at that, there's a statistical correlation where people were scared economically, and they start going out and they start seeking us and blaming us, and then you have lynchings. So when you look at it, there is actually a correlation between this and the targeting of softer targets. Softer targets is a trade term for communities that typically don't focus on the security the same way. So people think, correctly or incorrectly, that it's going to be easier to attack. So when you have a church that, granted, this church is fantastic and has security that are actually assigned to it and present, but not every church has that. So we look like softer targets. So if you don't see security outside, if you don't think that they have security on site, then they're gonna try things a little bit differently. So softer targets and people who are championing social justice issues. So when you have things that are going on, like in the 8th right now, where they're getting particularly affected by it in Louisiana with the redistricting, and you have people that are calling for our unity, when you have churches and communities like Bishop Brookins was also talking about this morning on our conference call that we had, when you have communities that are coming together like this, if for any of us who did not actually live through it and were not there with Malcolm X, but you may have seen that movie X where you saw where he had the hand motion and they made the comment, no one should have that much power. Well, they see that as a threat. They see that as our unity is a threat to that. And so therefore, we then become those social justice champions. But January 17th of 2015 was not the start of violence against us. It was not the beginning. It was also not the end. So let's go back just a little bit. My little brother actually is the pastor of a church, Turner Monumental AME in Atlanta, Georgia. And that church, if you did not know, was actually the location of a great crime, a great tragedy, back October 5th of 2003. October 5th of 2003, there was a lady who came in there, and she was having some issues with her mother. She had been arguing, and they were getting set up down in the corner in, I guess, stage right, if you will, of the church from the altar, and they were down in the corner near where the piano was. And they were having discussions, and she was setting up for communion there. And while she was setting up, the young lady, she had been arguing, as we understand, with her mother. She came in and continued the argument in the morning. The pastor was there. He came down, and he was talking to them for a minute. And he turned in order to walk away at some point and go back towards his office area, and that's when she shot and killed him in the back of his head. But that wasn't the end of it, because she then shot and killed her mother and shot and killed herself. So a double homicide-suicide took place at my brother's church. Well, December of last year, I was actually visiting Atlanta with the family, and at that point, I had not been to and visited my brother's church. So I went and said, okay, well, let me just pop in quietly, because that's how I roll. I like to quietly sit in the back and not let people pay attention to who I am. And so I'm sitting back there quietly, and my sister-in-law comes in with my niece and nephews, and they say, Uncle, and so they come up and give me a hug. So cat was out of the bag kind of at that point anyway. But I'm still trying to sit in there quietly. Well, I'm texting my brother, and I see some people, because I try to read a crowd, and part of what I do is try to look for certain indicators, behavioral indicators, things that you all will take away from here today. But I look for these behavioral indicators and attention, and how much is somebody engaged or not engaged? What are they looking? How are they different? And so when I was reading that, I texted my brother, and I was like, okay, I got two questions for you. So the first one is, there's a gentleman in here, European American, white American, who's sitting in, and he came in, and he was smiling, carrying on, big dude though, rather muscular, tall, and bald-headed. And he came in, and in his bag, he took out a camera with a pretty good lens on it, and I was like, okay, this is kind of different. This is not common. So I texted my brother, and I was like, okay, well, I got a question about him, and then I got a question because he was over there in house left, stage right, if you will. So he was back in that corner, and then over on the other side, there was a young lady who came in, and this was, again, December in Atlanta. Atlanta's not super cold, but she came in. She didn't take her coat off. She had her backpack on, and when she sat down, she kept the backpack on. She didn't take it off. Like, okay, that's a little bit different. Well, there are certain communities, subsections of the community, particularly the unhoused, where they don't want to get away from their property. And so I was like, well, what are we dealing with here? She kept her head down. She was not engaging. She was very detached with her behavior. I was like, okay, this is a little bit different. So I texted him about both. I said, do you know who he is? Do you know who she is? And he said, yeah, white guy, I know who he is. He's a great member. He's good. He's like, I know who he is. And he said, but the other one, do your thing. So I was like, okay. So I understood what that meant. He knew my background. So I said, okay, well, let me see what's going on here. Well, it came time in the service where my sister-in-law was reading out the announcements, recognizing visitors. And so she said, I'm glad to see my brother-in-law's here. And, he's the director of security for the AME Church. So at that point then, okay, eyes had kind of shifted over. I was like, yeah, the cat's really out the bag now. So I was watching what was going on there. And as I was watching, the other lady kind of got a little bit, looked over at me and was a little bit nervous. And I was like, okay, this is Turner Monumental. This is the church that has actually had this issue. And so I was like, okay, well, what are we doing here? So then she plays musical chairs in the middle of service. She gets up and she walks over across the center aisle, because it's actually divided by a center aisle. She walks over across the center aisle and sits on the opposite side, but she actually got a little bit closer to me. And I was like, okay, well, what's going on with this? So at the time for speaking and greeting, passing the peace, good morning, how you doing today? And so I came up and I was shaking her hand, trying to shake her hand, and no, she didn't want to shake my hand. I was like, okay. So I just smiled and continued, and one of the pastors who was also present, one of the preachers came up, and she engaged her, and she spoke with her. I said, okay. So that's a learning moment. We'll get to this more, but that's a learning moment because I wasn't the one who was going to establish the rapport, but somebody else had the rapport. So they had that, and I was like, okay. So if I need to channel something to effectively communicate with this lady, whatever issue she may have going on, this is the pastor that I need in order to be the one to get there. So I said, okay, let's do that. So she was the one who was engaged, and I was like, okay. But we still didn't know what was going on with this lady and her behavior, why she wouldn't let go of this backpack. So it came time when she came up, just before the preacher was getting ready to preach, and she walked down to the front row. Well, I paralleled along the outside, and I came along and sat down on the same front pew with her. And so I'm looking across, and good morning, and I just waved to her and smiling and watching her because I did not know. So she had closed that gap, and I was like, what is going on with her behavior? I'm trying to read everything that she's got going on. At one point in the service, she reaches into her coat, and I'm like, okay, well, let's watch and see what she's doing here. And she takes out her telephone and said, okay. So again, one more time, I know we've already talked about this, but this is the church that has already had this tragedy. People are tense. People are on edge. And I know, I don't doubt, but I know that there was not 100% attention on that sermon that morning because people are like, what's going on? I learned from my brother later that the sister of the shooter is still a member of that church. And the widow of the pastor is still a member of that church. So they are both in that congregation. And so there's tension there. And I was like, wow, this is really a hot moment here. And so I ended up, and I was texting my brother, and so silently, without me actually introducing, other than my sister-in-law having presented me to the whole congregation, I ended up coordinating through text in order to say, hey, we got the usher over here who is also a trustee, and I was like, okay, I'm going to watch, I'm going to move. And so we were coordinating like a chessboard with people that I had not met and communicated with before, because communication is essential. We will get to that. Communication is essential in knowing that plan. Whether you have wireless communication with Motorola radios, whether you're talking about that with your security outside, with security who may be present as a part of your congregation, whether you're talking about the ushers, you need to have that communication and coordination. Because if not, and I've seen this in some churches, particularly big churches, you may have somebody who's a federal agent who's off duty carrying a weapon. You may have your local SFPD, in the case of San Francisco here, who's sitting in the congregation. And then you may have a security person outside, depending on where it is, who's also armed. And so all three of these people, how do we respond? Does everybody have the same level of training? Does everybody know where their threshold is, the rules of engagement in the military? Do you know where that is? Because if not, you're going to have a mess. You're going to have blue on blue situations where somebody doesn't know that somebody else is armed and somebody doesn't. So you have to communicate. You have to have a plan. And you all will walk away from here with this plan today. To give you the end of that one, the lady is what we call an EDP in the law enforcement circles, emotionally disturbed person. I cannot say, because I am not qualified to do so, I am not a mental health professional, I cannot say that she was schizophrenic. However, I have dealt with a whole lot of people who are schizophrenic, and she had a lot of those behaviors and indicators going on, so that may have been the issue with which she was dealing. So going back to the slide presentation for just a moment here, Bethel AME, Gainesville, and we're going to go through a whole lot faster. That was just that one story so that you all understand. But Bethel AME, Gainesville, a lot of people don't know about this, but in 2019, there was a young lady, 16 years old, who wanted to do the same thing that Dylan Roof had done, but she didn't have a firearm. So she went with an edged weapon, with a blade, to the church in order to attack during Bible study. The pastor there happened to have said, just happened by God's grace, said, we're not having Bible study today. So she was unsuccessful with that. But she had articulated her plan, and she ended up going to jail for that. Metropolitan AME, we have tensions going on. So we have issues going on with Black Lives Matter and the Proud Boys, and Metropolitan AME being the symbolic, the flagship there in the district, right there in the heart of the district, which had been until the current administration overturned it, right next to Black Lives Matter Square. So right there in the heart of D.C., just up from the White House. The Covenant School in, well, I guess we're jumping with two. The Covenant School in Nashville, Tennessee. That was actually the Presbyterian Church of America. If you are not aware, the difference between PCA and PCUSA is PCUSA is a more progressive branch of the Presbyterian Church, and they are ones that are more accepting and open of the LGBTQ community. Well, if you're in communities like this one, San Francisco is pretty well known around the nation and around the world for being a larger per capita LGBTQ community, then if you are more open and accepting and affirming of that, then you may become a target in certain areas. Well, in the case of the Covenant School, the young lady who had gone to school there, who had graduated from that school and left, she was actually going through some gender-affirming issues, some questions about her identity. It's my understanding that she did not feel fully embraced by that school because PCA is very conservative, very strict, and so she went back and she had gone and taken a tour of her old school. Well, what she was doing in that tour was actually kind of what I did yesterday in going through these three churches. We looked at the strengths and vulnerabilities. We looked at camera placement locations. So she knew where to go and where to not go, which doors were sticking, which doors would be open, which cameras would not cover her. And so she came in with a long weapon, with a rifle, and she came in and she shot and killed multiple people there. I think it was 5. Children and adults. So she came in with the agenda, and if you don't know how that story ended, the tactical officers who were responding came in, and she was trapped in the library, pointed weapons towards them, and that's how that ended. But how is the AME church still affected by this? Tops Grocery, if you weren't aware of that in 2022, AME victims there. Dollar General, right next to Edward Waters University, the guy came in, and he was looking around on campus prior to the actual shooting. And he actually said, you all are not my victims. I mean, that was almost like a biblical statement. I mean, you all are not my victims. But then he went next door to Dollar General, where being a former employee, he had the gripe with them, and he did shoot and kill over there. So we have a lot of locations with this, and I mentioned yesterday to the pastors and the elder who were walking through with me, St. Paul AME in St. Louis. We had a situation where a bomb threat was made, where the guy made a terroristic threat to that church and said, "Hey, I'm going to blow this place up." And I found out about that one through Google search, and I reached out to the pastor there, Spencer Booker, and I said, "Hey, can I help you out with this? Can I be your voice, your liaison, your advocate?" He said, "Absolutely. I didn't know that you could help out with this stuff." So I reached out to the prosecutor's office, and I helped out, and I said, we were in constant communication through those relevant months. And I said, "Hey, let me help you out. Let me make this happen." And we got to the point in the process where the prosecutor was saying, "Okay, well, I think we're going to have to go with a plea deal." The person did not make bond. He was in custody for multiple months. It was either 4 or 6. I can't remember right now. And over that amount of time, what happens is if a person doesn't make bond, they're probably going to end up with something like time served. So I said, "Okay, let's go with, he's been locked up. Let's go with this plea deal. Let's go with this conviction." And it would have been a felony in Missouri. Would have been. I guess I tell you how the story's going to end. And so we got on a conference call with the prosecutor, with Spencer Booker and Reverend Booker, and they said, "Hey, we'd like to go with a plea deal on this." And he said, "Well, I just want our voices to be heard. I want this to go to trial. I want the maximum penalty." And I said, "Maximum penalty for a situation where the guy doesn't have a history of doing this, it's not very likely." And so what happens, as you figured out by my statement, is they went to court, and then there was not sufficient evidence. Well, part of the problem is there was not an audio recording of him doing it. There was not what we call direct evidence. There is a camera angle, which was great, that shows the suspect present at the church at that time, but that's called circumstantial evidence in a courtroom. That means, yeah, he's there, but that's not proof that he did the crime. And so what happened was they said, "Yeah, not guilty." So that's how that one happens. Perfect cutback. Thank you on the cut there. And then Dr. Lisa Cook with the Federal Reserve Board. With this current administration, she has been a target of it, but I don't know whether any of you all know that Dr. Lisa Cook is actually an AME in the 4th District. So AMEs are affected, and that is why I am here in order to help out with this. There is a trade term called REMVE, REMVE, and that term means racially and ethnically motivated violent extremists. Racially and ethnically motivated violent extremists. Well, the current administration says, we're not going to get away with that REMVE thing. So instead, they call them DVEs now, domestic violent extremists. So we've taken away the racially and ethnically motivated part, even though several states and the federal code still have hate crimes on their books, but there is a current momentum toward eliminating issues that we have continued to deal with, that our mothers, fathers, grandparents have dealt with, and they're trying to ignore it. Well, foreign terrorist organizations are also calling for action. They're calling and saying, "Hey, the United States is in an uproar. The left and the right, the north and the south, the east and the west, they can't get it together." So foreign countries are continuing to push the buttons. If you're not aware of it, they are continuing to do that. I saw an interesting article, again, doing an internet search, where there was a degree of success because a representative of the Emmanuel Nine said there is a foreign country that was calling for this, the Emmanuel Nine situation, to happen. They were planting the seeds and continuing to call for this violence against the AME church, and we want for them to have to pay for that. And they said, "Okay, you're legit. You are correct," which amazed me, but there's a certain depth of that information and knowledge that I can get into and certain parts that I can't, but I'm here to tell you, do internet searches on it, and you will find out that there are a certain couple of countries countries that are all over this stuff with cybersecurity issues too. And you will see two particular, very large, very powerful countries that keep popping up in it. So there are people, there are countries, there are companies that are being masked because they are actually being operated by governments that are trying to get us to fight with the administration, to fight left and right. So that's why I am here. So the number of incidents that we're dealing with is on the rise, particularly if we're talking about these violence and hostility against churches. Statistically, the number one thing that we will have is vandalism. You will have markings on walls. You will have spray paint. You will have sometimes hate being called for on these walls. And a lot of people think, well, it's just some paint on the wall. I'm not really worried about it. Let's wash it. Let's clean it up. But we need to know about this because that escalates. And it also tells me and tells us there are problems within that area. So if I don't know that a geographic area is having these problems, I can't help you. I can't get these resources to you. So then it goes from, after vandalism, the number two type incident that we have is arson, where they are burning churches or trying to burn churches. And part of what I would say is, what kind of fire system do you have in place? What kind of fire response? How close is your fire department? All of these are issues that you should know and you should have a good idea about with your churches, and you will when we leave here today. But gun-related issues, they're actually the statistically lowest number. That doesn't mean that they are not a problem. That means that they are a big problem when those things happen. But I will be honest with you, statistically, that is your lowest probability, but it is still on the rise from what we are having occur right now. So we're going to continue looking at this and why we are here. If you look at 2018 and 2019, there was a rise. And I know y'all are saying, well, why things dropped down in 2020? Quick answer, COVID. Absolutely. Everybody knows it. You weren't in church. You're not going to have as many incidents of it. But otherwise, there is a rise. There was a steady rise in that. And I think if we were to go back to 2016, we would probably see, starting in maybe November of 2016, that there was a beginning on that rise. There are people who are pushing buttons, who are saying, well, there are racial issues and, they aren't like us. And so that's why they keep pushing that. And so that's what we're looking at here. This is a breakdown, and I will include this information for you all later. You don't need to focus on it right now, but these are quick little 2-3 sentence synopses of many, but not all, of the incidents that have occurred. Many, but not all, that have occurred affecting us with churches, with communities of faith, synagogues and mosques included around the world. And this is starting off in 2012. And this list, I didn't even include the last 4 or 5 incidents that have occurred. So this is going back to 2012, minus the last 4 or 5 that had occurred when I put this up here. So this is October of 2025 to 2012. So if you do actually, and this is one thing this is the first slide that shows it, but if you all do choose and want to do it, and I know we're in the tech community here, so I don't have to explain this one to you all, but if you want to take this QR code and take your phone and aim it up here, you can actually get your own list of this information. And we're going to have lots of links pop up during this. But this will help you get a partial list. Why is a partial list of attacks against houses of worship useful for you? Because we're going to get to a point with this handout. After we take a break in a moment, we're going to get to the point with these handouts where we're looking at it and we're saying, okay, let's put this in here. Our church is in an area, our church is in a community where there have been attacks, there have been issues, there are police reports. And when we're asking for money, grant money, free money from the government, we can do this because we can substantiate it. It's like doing a research paper. When you can back it up with the knowledge behind it, that's what it is. Otherwise, you're making statements that are just, I don't know where they're coming from with that. Show me where that source is. So that's what we're going to do with this partial list of attacks. With this partial list of attacks. What I do and receive is I actually go through Department of Homeland Security information. I get bulletins, updates, notices about all kinds of attacks or potential attacks and issues. So I'm looking at this. Actually, if you could put that back up there for just a moment, thank you. There's several people trying to get that one with their telephones in order to get the links there. But what I go through is I try to assess this information and say, okay, is this relevant? Do I need to send it? And if I see something, bet money on it, that if I see something going on in this Bay Area and I say, hey, we got this issue going on, I'll say, Elder, can you please push this out to the Bay Valley District and let them know, hey, we got hot issues going on. We have planned protests. We have these problems going on in this area. And so all of that information is communicated to you all. As soon as the last two get through with this one. All right. So here is an example of the assessment, and this is the Office of Intelligence Analysis. Here is a sample of the assessment that shows a breakdown of what it is that we're dealing with. How often do these problems occur? None of this is classified. How often do these problems occur? What is it that we're dealing with? And if you see the religious, again, we refer to it as 10 incidents. There are 10 incidents, and this is a time period from 2010 to 2025. But you're looking at government sector. When people have gripes at their jobs, that's when people come in. I don't know whether you all are aware of it, but it's all been out there in the press, and so I will refer to this in the broader terms. But when I came onto this job, this church had, and has not completely resolved, but had a $92 million program, not 19, a $92 million problem that was going on. And so we had to deal with that. Well, what does that tell me? Well, the number one incident that we have is people who are having job issues and complaints. And so this is an internal management issue where I had to deal with that. Well, not only do I have external people that I still continue to call REMVs, racially and ethically motivated violent extremists, but I also have to worry about the internal. Because when, and I use this name all over the place, but when Bobby, whoever Bobby may be, when Reverend Bobby happens to be retiring, and he's getting ready to be done with his job, and he's worked hard for his entire life, and now he doesn't know what he's going to do. There are questions, there are problems. And let's say that Reverend Bobby is from Texas, the number one state that's really open with the firearm situation. So he's got his gun, and he's upset, and he wants answers, and he's coming in, and he's aggravated. Then that means that I have to change my security posture. I'm still going to greet him with a smile and still say, Reverend Bobby, how you doing today? But he's not coming into general board or general conference with that firearm. So I have to worry about internal and external, and I have to greet people with professionalism. So this is what we do. Okay. So as I said, Texas is number one with that. Well, if you look at the two darkest states in the way that this is color-coded, the two darkest states are Texas and California for the number of incidents of mass casualty in the 38 states in which they had occurred from 2010 to 2025. The number of incidents are highest in these areas. So you have a very liberal and a very conservative state that both have weapons issues, concentrations of people, and the number of things that are occurring. So this is how we have to analyze this. We have to figure out what's going on and how do we deal with this. Well, one tool that we can use is called BTAM. And BTAM is the Behavioral Threat Assessment Management Model. I'll get you more information about it if you all are interested in it. So part of what we do with this training is we look at and we analyze, okay, we have people at different levels. Statistically, a lot of times it occurs in schools or workplace environment because these are softer targets. But we're trying to look at the behavior, and we're trying to say, a lot of times in interviews, you will hear people say, oh, he was such a nice boy, he was such a nice lady, you know, we never saw this coming. You will see it coming. You just have to know what to look for. And what this is a behavior threat assessment management model where you get people from different walks of life. What kind of walks of life? Well, we're talking about people in families, social, community, online circles, but we're also talking about the court system. We're talking about law enforcement, but we're talking about schools. We're talking about churches. We're talking about job places and mental health, or even social services. And all of these people, particularly the yellow-coded circles there, they sit down, literally, and they have discussions and say, okay, well, I'm not going to use Bobby anymore. We're going to say Roberta. Roberta is in, we're going to say Roberta is having some issues, and, she's getting frustrated. Roberta was a straight A student, but now Roberta's getting C's and D's and F's. What is going on in her life? Or Roberta used to be really calm, and now she's just snapping off and getting violent with people in conversation. Where is this coming from? So we have school counselors, we have social service, we have other people in that community, and they're going to sit down. Why? Why do we do BTAM instead of waiting until she gets into juvie court? Because BTAM is designed so that you can actually address these issues before they get into the court system. So we can say, how do we address the issues? This is what's going on in her life. How do we calm her down? How do we help fix these problems before they become a member of the court system? So the BTAM model is excellent for that, BTAM. And I've had training in it, and we can get you all trained in it so that we can figure out how to change the community before we have those problems. So what are personal changes that you can do in order to address some of these problems? The biggest thing that you all can do individually, in your homes, in yourselves, is change your mindset. You need to have a survival mindset, and you need to cultivate situational awareness. You're going to keep your head on a swivel, as they say in the military. You're going to keep looking around, watch your six. Make sure, you're going to pay attention. If you all are walking from church and you're walking along the street and it's a late night program, do you all walk in pairs? Do you make sure that somebody is walking with you? Does somebody know where you're going? Now, when I was young, we actually, not quite in the dark ages, but when I was young, we actually had this thing where you would get on the telephone and you would call, because you had to pay by the call, and you would call and sometimes ask for the middle name of the person so that you would let them know that you got home safe and things like that. These were the little coded things that you could do. Or you ring one time and don't let the call connect, and okay, yep, they got home. So these were the little coded things that you could do in order to check. Yeah, he's that old. So these are little things that you can do in order to check. Check in on your people. Make sure that somebody let somebody know where you're going. Use things like the Find Friend app if you happen to have an iPhone, or some other location app in order to make sure that people know where you're going and that you got there safe. The people are animals. Human beings are animals, and there is a predatory response. There is the opportunistic criminal element. So if they have the chance to do it, they will take it. Here in San Francisco, walking around in the past, I guess 18 hours, 19 hours, as somebody pointed out that I kept messing with them for 19 hours. In the past 19 hours, I've noticed a lot of people walking around, a lot of addicts. People who are looking to try to get that fix. They're on the streets. And so if they can get you, if you're not paying attention, if you're walking around and your purse is hanging behind you, and you got that nice purse, because I don't roll like that, but if you got like one of these Coach purses and your Coach purse is all open behind you and unzipped, and you got a computer or a laptop or something hanging out the back of it, they're going to take that chance. They're gonna snatch that because you're not paying attention. Well, I didn't specify this, but I lived in Russia for a while, 4.5 years, and so you will see these little babushki, these little old ladies, these grandmas, and when they sit down on the metro, when they're walking around on the streets, they just have their hands just right over the top of their purse, which is already zipped up, but just in case, they have it on top. Because they have lived that situational awareness. They know about the opportunistic criminals. And this is the same advice that I would give you in Johannesburg that I would in Moscow. But cross your hands. If you sit down on public transportation, if you're walking around on the streets, make sure that you're aware of that. Just take a look. If you look at that criminal, if you look at that addict that's walking behind you, and just look at them and make sure that they know that you see them in both ways, it takes away that edge that they would have otherwise had of not knowing whether or not you're aware that they're there. So that's what I want you to do. I want you to be aware. I want you to keep looking. The two books that I mentioned up there, The Gift of Fear and Fear Itself. The Gift of Fear is by a man named Gavin de Becker, who's actually here in California. Gavin de Becker Gavin de Becker and Associates is actually a company that provides protection. He does not divulge the list of it, but a lot of celebrities, a lot of multimillionaires and billionaires, I can, not with a high probability, but I can 100% guarantee you that there are people within this Bay Area who are protected by Gavin DeBecker and Associates. Well, in this book, The Gift of Fear, what it does is it lets you learn how to specifically describe and codify what's going on. If you flash back just a moment, I told you about that Turner Monumental situation with my little brother. I didn't just say that lady in the church doesn't seem right. I said, she's wearing her coat when other people have taken their coat off. She's wearing her backpack, hasn't taken that off. Her eyes are averting the gaze. Her behavior is detached. I described the elements of it. The Gift of Fear lets you all learn how to describe it. When things don't look right, when things don't fit, you can learn how to describe that, because when you call for police assistance and you say, there's a guy who's coming in here and he's got holes in his pants, he smells like urine, he's doing this, he's doing that, and you can describe exactly what those issues are, then they can say, okay, well, this person is paying attention. They know what they're doing. And so consequently, they can come back and say, okay, we will have an officer on the way. They will take you more seriously when you do that with more information. So improve your environment, CPTED. I'm going to show you a slide in just a little bit that's going to describe exactly what CPTED is. CPTED is an acronym which is Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. When we get to that slide, you will see exactly how it is that it works. But in brief, as an introduction to what will come later, you all have areas here where you have people who are addicts or unhoused or both, who are trying to sleep within areas of your property. Well, if you build it out, particularly if you're using certain things such as prickly things, cacti, cactuses, if you use those within those areas, you can't sleep on them. So it's crime prevention through environmental design. Instead of putting spikes up, iron spikes, you're actually putting up nature spikes. You're putting up thorns, and people aren't going to be within those areas. They're also not going to be leaving drugs on your property, which is a whole different issue. So all of these are things that you can deal with. We're going to talk about less lethal options, spray, batons. We're going to get into that because every state differs, and California has a weird, in my opinion, a weird order of what you can and can't carry, and so we're going to talk about that. Even if you don't happen to have a weapon on you, you have weapons that are at your access when you change your mindset. So when you go down the street, and since we're in San Francisco, when you have that Pete's Cup in your hand and you're walking around with it and it's fresh, you got that red eye, you got that anniversary with a shot of espresso in it, and you're walking down the street and somebody's getting ready to attack you, what do you have in your hand with that fresh cup of coffee? You got boiling hot coffee, and that's going to scald them, it's going to burn them, it's going to get you time, and you can get away. Get off the X, as we say. So you have response time from that. So think about what you have. When you have pens in your hand, particularly, I didn't bring all the examples of it, and she's already ahead of me on the next one. But when you have pens in your hand, if your mindset is right, you can hit certain sensitive parts and you can actually buy time and get away from an attacker, particularly ones who's an addict. But as she brought them out and was getting them there, if you have keys, if you have house keys, particularly if you have multiple, when you're going to your car, put one key in between each of your fingers. You have created a claw. You don't have a weapon on you other than the one that's between your ears, but you have created one for that moment if somebody tries to attack you. So that's how I want you to change your mindset. That's how I want you to be more responsive. Keys, pens, more options like hot coffee. What about handguns? What is the AME Church's official global position on handguns? There isn't one. There are 42 countries with different positions on it. So I have to kind of go with what the position is one way or another. Now, most states, I will say this, most of the United States, even if it is a more open position with firearms, you still have to have authority of the church in order to do that. Well, what is authority of the church? It depends. State to state, church to church, religion to religion. So in the law, they aren't going to say, be sure to have permission of the pastor, the priest, the rabbi, the imam. They aren't going to go down the list of that, so they're going to say, have the authority of the church. Well, in the AME church, where does the buck stop? Where is that authority because that's also responsibility that comes with it. Can the pastor be the one to give you responsibility? The law doesn't specify. Is it the presiding elder who's going to take that burden and be the one to carry it and say, hey, I said it was okay that they could carry firearms? Is it the bishop who's going to do that? You know why nobody wants to be the one to say it's okay? Liability. That magic word is right there. Because if you say it's okay to do it, that's one level. And if you say that it's not, that's also another level. So I have heard some pastors say that they have been told, well, pastor, I'm not supposed to be telling you this, but I'm just going to tell you that I got my permit. Well, Bobby, I'm not saying whether that's Roberta or Robert, but Bobby decides, hey, I've been hunting since I was this high, and I live out in, and I do pick on this state a little bit too much also. I live out in rural Arkansas, and I've been, I live out in rural Arkansas, and I've just been hunting this long, and they have no law enforcement. They're not active law enforcement. They're not military. Okay, so what is your background? Do you understand? How well do you understand when you can and cannot do it? So all of this is to say we have to have a more secure mindset as a church. We have to figure out how to approach that. Security will be either reinforced or dismissed from the pulpit. If your pastor, if your presiding elder, if your bishop doesn't care about security, the church isn't going to care about security. They aren't going to fund it. They aren't going to want to have the changes. They aren't going to want to have good closure on the doors in order to make sure that they're safe. However, if you have a more secure church environment, if you have people who feel safe, who feel sanctuary in both definitions of it when they come inside, that's going to work with you. And people tend to be more generous when they're also feeling safer. So that is why I'm here doing this. I mentioned that septed thing, and this is where I was going to introduce it. So over here, outside the church, we have the bushes that were built up here. Well, with these bushes here, these are great. However, and up here, I was told that it's also a wet area that's also uncomfortable. Well, if they know that the ground is wet, even though you keep it well watered for the purpose of stuff growing, that's not going to discourage somebody who's truly homeless or truly an addict. They'll end up buying a little piece of tarp, and they will put that down so that they can sleep in these areas. However, if you go with these types of vegetation, rose bushes with thorns, cacti, holly bushes, agave bushes, and this was an agave bush, by the way, over here in the middle. I have a laser pointer, but these types of screens suck that up. But these type make it difficult. They make it somewhat of a challenge, but if the whole area is comprised of different types of firethorn bushes and prickly pear cactuses and things like this, then these are options that make it uncomfortable for people. And it looks pretty. So what it looks like you're doing is, oh, you're making it so pretty and nice. Well, crime prevention through environmental design is how you can create barriers to that and still make it look nice. One thing that I often describe, and at this particular church, it's not really an issue, but at the last church, actually, where I did a presentation, there is a T intersection where people could drive up the hill, and if they don't turn left or right, but they come up with a full head of steam, they could drive into the side of that church. And so what I told them at that church is, well, in the government, we use a lot of things called bollards, these posts that stand up out of the ground. The official term is bollard. So if you use bollards you can build, and they're planted into the ground at a certain depth. They prevent the ramming of things into the building, but they look ugly. So what can you do instead is you can do concrete planters. You can actually have these long decorative planters that are full of soil made out of concrete. And depending on what type of vehicle it is, if somebody comes up with a full head of steam coming toward that church in a vehicle, not like a tractor trailer, but a normal car, they aren't going to be able to run it into the side of it. Well, how often do cars run into the side of churches? Well, just a couple of months ago. LDS, and I think in West as well as in Midwest, it's not as uncommon as you think of people trying to do this. So these are ways, crime prevention through environmental design, where you can help out your area. So if you look at this right here in the center of this is San Francisco. This is what we're looking at as far as the crime and safety map. Well, if you look at this, the lighter the color, like yellow or soft orange, is a lower incident of crime reporting. And this is what it looks like right here in this area for total crimes, property crimes, as well as violent crimes. Well, if we look at this, it looks darker in that same area than it does here. That's because what we're looking at here is violent crime. Well, this is gaming the system. For those of you who aren't familiar with how we do this with statistics, this is just the violent crime, but it looks worse. And this area does have, of the 3 churches that I visited yesterday, this area does have a higher incident of violent crime compared to the other 2. Well, the reason for that is in part because you have addict-on-addict crimes, and when they're reporting that, that all goes into here. So there is a higher number. There is a higher concentration in this area. So I'm not saying that because, like, a lot of times colleges and universities will underreport statistics in order to let you know, oh, this is a safe school. You still want to come here. And we don't want to overreport it, but we want to get grant money. So we're going to use the right reporting of statistics in order to say, hey, we have a high rate of incidents here, and so that's why we're going to go with the violent reporting here. So in comparison, this is what it looks like over at Allen Chapel. And you see actually some green areas. They're really going well in those green pockets. So it's relatively, comparatively lower reporting, and this is for violent crime only. So this is really good for Allen Chapel. And this is what it looks like over there at Wright Chapel. So this is a comparison. You see green pockets, you see yellow, you see a little bit of light orange. So you're doing okay. I have seen a lot worse. I have seen like almost a whole screen red in some places that I have done this. So, I mean, we are a church for our people, and sometimes our people in our communities are going to have higher incidents of this. So in this area, what are some options that we can use? We're going to go through this faster. Interestingly, in California, tasers and stun guns have a lower threshold than some places where no civilians can have it. In California, you do not need a license. You do not need a carry concealed weapons license in California to carry EIDs. EID is electromuscular incapacitation devices. EID is the general term for taser. Taser is a company, kind of like Band-Aid for adhesive bandage. So taser is one, and if you are between 16 and 18, you need parental consent to carry it. You don't need a license to carry this, even concealed, which is amazing in California. California is pretty restrictive on other stuff. However, no person addicted to any narcotic drugs shall purchase, possess, or use a stun gun, electromuscular incapacitation device, taser, whatever. There is training that you need to do, and be very clear, it is always for self-defense. If you own, carry, if you have a taser, please make sure that it is very clear, this is for my defense. This is in case something happens to me, so that nobody's saying, oh yeah, I got it because there's always a problem with this neighbor down the street. That gets you towards a premeditated kind of thing. So this is for your self-defense. Now, OC spray or pepper spray. I was a defensive tactics instructor with the police department. I have been sprayed 11 times. It is not fun. You get mucus coming out of your nose everywhere. It'll clear you up like nothing. Halls, Vicks, they got nothing on you. It'll bring, and your eyes will clamp shut. It's very tight. It's very uncomfortable. If those of you like me are very masochistic and you go out and you eat all of these hot peppers all the time, then when you have that stuff, it'll make your eyes clamp shut. If you've ever made the mistake of going to the restroom, gentlemen, and you forget to wash your hands and you have some super hot wings, you know that sensation that I'm talking about where it's like, oh, that burns. So over here, you cannot carry more than 2.5 ounces. But there's not a percentage limitation. Some states have a percentage limitation. Again, always defense. But there are more restrictions on what you can carry and where you can carry it. And the big caveat on where you can carry it is all 3 of these churches that I visited yesterday have schools on site. You cannot carry weapons around schools. You cannot carry weapons around schools. So keep that one in mind. when school is in session, you cannot do that. Now, in California, batons, expandable batons, ASP batons, interestingly, they are illegal for civilians to carry. And I say most civilians because if you're a security guard, a licensed security guard, you can actually carry these with that license. If you are active law enforcement, you can carry it. However, you have to have a permit in order for those people to be carrying that. Otherwise, no, they don't want you carrying batons. Now, I have a different mindset of which is the most dangerous in my mind in this order, but we're going to go with the California rules on that so that you understand. Now, the question is, can you carry in California in a church? January of 2026, this issue came back up. And it's not very clear because it's still under fight. If you do not have a permit and you bring a weapon into the church, you could be dealing with a felony there. So do not do that. 100%. Full stop. Do not do that. If there is an active school, firearms are strictly prohibited under the Gun-Free School Zone Act. If you bring a weapon into a church in open carry, because there are a lot of open carry states, but California is not one of them, so you come in here with a weapon in a holster on your side, visible, that's a misdemeanor. That's a misdemeanor in California. And you must have permission from the church to carry, unless it is so posted. If you have signs that say 100% do not carry weapons and you post those up, churches are still private property. And that's an incident that we had to deal with in a different state, Commonwealth as it was, where people were trying to come in and they said, oh, well, we're having a town hall meeting here with a public figure. I can come in here. And you can say, no, you cannot come in here because this is private property. And if you are agitating and causing problems, I understand that you think that you can just walk into our church because there is a public meeting, but this is still a private property place. So I appreciate you. I respect you. Deliver it with a smile, but no, sir, no, ma'am. You cannot come in here today. I'm sorry. This is, you are not allowed. So make sure that you do it and deliver it with a smile. You want to train your people and make sure that they fully understand the laws and parameters within your state. And you cannot assume that you were authorized just because you don't see a sign. Again, communicate, so that you can make sure that that happens. When you come back from break, in just a moment, you are going to have a copy, a very short break, please. You all are going to have a copy of this, which is the Power of Hello Guide. And I'm going to describe that and tell you about this tool that's going to be able to help you understand how it is that you have this power within you in order to be able to communicate, to break down that wall, to get people to work with you, and to persuade them to do what it is, to do right. And when we come back after our brief break, we will discuss that one, and I will let you all know how it is that we're going to put all this together. So if you can, if you could come back at 10:35 for me, please, 10:35. Thank you.
While you're breaking, pastors in particular, please see Reverend Hood. If you have not put in your registration money for your church, we are looking forward to everybody, even if your officers aren't here or are not online. We're looking for everybody to do your amount, which was $125. Please see him about it if you have it today. And if you don't have it today, please let him know when you and or your church will submit that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pastor, if you're still within earshot, for keeping us right on time with that. He was doing that at 10:34, calling people in. Thank you. All right. Doing great, doing great. So I'm going to, we're going to switch back over to the presentation, and I'm going to show you all, I'm going to give you a link. Now what you see online and what you see up in here, if you want to use your phones in order to do it, this will give you a digital copy of the same thing that's in your hand. However, there is a slight difference in the format. This is still the Power of Hello document. Now, if you look at the Power of Hello document that you have, you should see on a couple of these pages, you should see some faces that look familiar, and not all of them, but you should see some that are more welcoming, more affirming. These are our faces. If you look at the other version of it, it's updated, but I don't know why in this current administration we're a little less represented, in the updated copies, but we see our faces a little less. So use whatever format you choose. I know that sometimes a different wording of it will also help you understand. So the Power of Hello is really an awesome thing, the way that it works here. And I know that we have had, I've lived in the South for a long period of time, quarter century. Well, actually, I guess I still am. So I've lived in the South for a longer period of time, probably almost all of my life, with the definition of that. And the way that we work down there is a little bit different. You always have, every AME church pretty much has that one person, male or female, somebody who's always in the business. And I'm starting to hear the laughter. And they'll come up to you and say, Hey, baby, I don't know you. Where are you from? Darling, I just haven't seen you before. Is this your first time here? And that is the person who has that gift that we are looking for in this. That is the one who's going to have the magic in the Power of Hello. We have discussed that here at Bethel AME in San Francisco, you all are blessed to have enough people in different roles. And the three roles that I want us to be looking at are a greeter, an usher, and your security person, or persons. So a greeter, an usher, and your security person. Well, your security person, while they can have some of these skills, I want your security person to be able to deal with security issues. Now, as far as your usher goes, that's kind of like how we had things divided in the department. When I came in and replaced my predecessor, if you will, in this position, interestingly enough, his name was also Bobby, in case you know him. So when I came and replaced Bobby in the security function, it wasn't eliminating the other. So I said, there are certain elements of it that I don't know, and to be honest, I don't want to have to focus on that. And that was the protocol. That was the order of how we are going to go in, who's going to do that. So we now have separate roles. And in this church, we have the marshal. So we actually have the chief marshal, who is Reverend Steve Lewis. So Steve Lewis, he has it, when he's doing the procession, I'm like, great, Steve, you do your thing. I'm going to make sure that literally I have their back. So if you look at the procession and you see people going in, at the end of the Council of Bishops, I'm at the back, but I'm turning around and I'm focused on these other issues. I'm also looking at the left and right parameters. Is somebody trying to come in? Does somebody have a gripe with the bishop where they're trying to attack? So that is my focus. That is the security element. So we're getting back to that three-part thing again. So the usher, that's more or less what Steve Lewis is doing. He's taking you to your seats. He's guiding. And that's also an element of what we had in Bobby's position with the chief of protocol. So there's somebody who's dealing with, okay, how do we set this up? Where are people going? Who needs to go there? Who doesn't? That's fine. And as far as the actual control of that, that's a security element. Okay, you're not coming through here unless you have the proper credentials. You're not going to, thank you, sir, thank you, ma'am, but no. And now your greeters, that's that magic part. That's what's in your hand. That's the Power of Hello. That's the person who's finding out what's going on. Well, I told you that I told you that this work is about acronyms. And so there is an acronym here, and the acronym is Oh No. Now it's Oh No as in O-H and O. So we're going to break this down. The first thing I want you to do is observe. I want you to gather that information, but it's actually going to be intelligence because it's actionable. What are we going to do with this information? Is this useful or is this not? Is it just, hey, the lady happens to have on a camouflage pattern jacket, but it's not telling us, is this person military or not? And so that's an observation. We're just looking, and we had one laugh out there in the audience today because somebody's wearing that. But that's just an observation. So I'm going to continue looking at and assessing the behavior. I'm going to say, hey, is her posture sitting there on the edge of that pew like she's getting ready to jump up, or does she have her arms sitting over the side, body turned to the left, and so she's kind of chilling, okay? She may have been one of the, she may have been back in the day and have that military experience, but she's not on the edge of her seat today, so she does not have that tension. I'm looking at all of these factors together. That's what I want you to do. I want you to observe. I want you to gather that. And when you soak up that information, I want you to say, okay, well, what are we going to do with this? The lady I described to you at Turner Monumental, I described everything that she was doing, and that behavior was more of a concern. So we're going to observe, and then we're going to initiate the hello. We're going to say, hello. Hey, good morning. How are you? And that's your greeter. Sometimes it's your greeter and your security, as I'm the one that's often doing this, but I'm going to say hello, and I'm going to feel out how their response is. At CLO, for those who, I guess it was just last year, it may have been the summer before last, times are blending in my head here, but at CLO in Atlanta, I had a guy come in who also had on military olive drab green. That color by itself is not an indicator, particularly if you got like Coco Chanel lapel pins and stuff like that going on. But if you got on olive drab green, it's not a telltale sign all by itself. But you got to put it in context. You got to soak all this up. You got to get all your pieces together. And then you got to say, okay, well, what are we doing with this information? So when this guy was standing outside the ballroom and he had on that olive drab green and he had on a bit of a camo pattern and he was looking inside, I walked up to him and I said, hey, sir, how are you? Where are you from? And he said, well, I'm just staying in the hotel. I just saw your church meeting. A young African-American brother, one of us in the midst of it otherwise. So statistically, I was not like, and I will be honest with you, if he had a really militant look, I'd have probably had a lot more questions. But his posture, his body mechanics were not really on edge. He did not look like that was his intent at that time. So I was trying to assess it, and we were keeping an eye on him, trying to gather that. So I initiated my hello. And he was responsive and receptive to it. And he was like, I look like you all might have had a church meeting, and I just didn't know what was going on. I didn't know if you were having church service. And I said, well, actually, we aren't right now. I said, but if you're looking for a church home, we'll be glad to help you out and find out where you're from. He was like, I actually do go to church, but I just didn't know what was going on here. I was like, okay, well, that's cool. Well, somebody who's truly an attacker, there are actually indicator prevention behaviors. I can give you that handout too if you want it later. But there are certain things that people are going to do and not do when they're trying to prepare for an attack. They're trying to do a dry run. They're trying to see how law enforcement responds, whether security comes up and talks to them, all of these factors. But I want you to initiate that hello. In the case of the girl at Turner AME, she was not receptive to that. So that took it to the next level. Well, what is that next level? The third thing on your handout is negotiate the risk. How agitated is this person? What are we dealing with? We're trying to de-escalate a situation, potentially. We don't know what we're dealing with, so we're trying to figure out what's going on. So we're trying to go, okay, well, how much of a problem is this? Well, in the case of what was going on in Turner, I continued up and I sat on that front row and I continued to try to assess. And the most tense moment, even though most outside observers wouldn't have known it, was when she reached into her jacket for her telephone, because I didn't know what she was reaching for, and I was prepared with a certain level of response for that because I did not know what that was. That was an unknown, a variable for me at that time. But we try to control the variables, try to take away some of those elements. The question was posed to me yesterday, what about bag policies? If your church has a bag policy, can you bring in items, or do you have a clear bag policy like concerts? Now, I know all of y'all aren't concert goers and y'all aren't trying to check out Beyonce's latest and all the rest of that. But if you go to concerts, amen, rafters. If you go to concerts and sporting events, you will know that sometimes you have clear bag policies. If you want to go with that, then you all may actually use that as an element in your church. But if you're not concerned with it, you can probably tell people, because they don't know your official policy, if you have people that are coming in that are wandering off the streets, I am not saying that we should discourage the unhoused. There are a lot of really, really good brothers and sisters out there that are hitting hard times, and the church is the place to be their support. But if you have read that gift of fear, if you have studied this, if you're looking at their behavior, if you know what it is that is making you feel uneasy about that, then say, hey, ma'am, sir, if you can, we can't have that whole shopping cart worth of stuff up in here. We can't have those trash bags with all your clothes come in here. Can we have you sit in a different area, whether it's outside the glass, whether it's outside the door? We just can't have you bring that up in here. So say it to him, but don't say it to him like, you can't come up in here with that. Say it to him like, hey, I'm sorry, but would it be okay? Could we just put this outside this time? Do it with a smile. And that makes a world of difference. That is your power of hello. So we've navigated the risk, and that last step is obtain help if you have to get that help going on. So if you have to do it, you may have a code sign, the hand signal, something or another that you do in order to let people know. I mean, whether it's waving like this, and that is your one hand signal, that most people don't walk around with their hand going to the side like this. But if you're doing that, and then all of a sudden, you know, that's the sign, and then the person who's with security who sees that you're doing that, they can figure out, okay, well, you're the greeter, but for some reason he got a twitch going on with his hand. I need to come over there and step in. So that could be your hand sign in order to do that. So figure out a code, communicate with your people in order for them to know. Every church that I visited yesterday, and I think without exception still to this day, I have not seen a church that has a panic button hardwired, or a life alert type thing going on with a pennant where you say, hey, I need some help going on. I have encouraged people to do this, and there are certain companies that actually specialize in this stuff. So we can get options for you. We can figure out how to do that. The best thing, of course, is that it works directly with your existing system. So in a church like this, actually all of the churches had alarm systems. Kudos to you all. A lot of churches will either not have alarm systems or have alarm systems where, oh, they had an ADT system back 2-3 pastors ago, and we just didn't pay in order to keep that going on. And they still got the sensors on the doors, but we don't mess with that, because we out here in Crossett, Arkansas. Okay, so we got different elements of that. So this magic pyramid over here is actually, this is the national level. This is the same thing that is used for us to figure out what is going on in a deadly force situation. However, this is the same thing that I want you to learn how to do in your minds when you're dealing with even the power of hello. This is the ability, intent, opportunity, or ability, opportunity, threat. This is trying to figure out, are all of the elements there? So you could have, particularly in some parts of this country, you could have somebody who's carrying a weapon on the outside of their body, open carry. There are a lot of states, I can't give you the exact number right now, but it's well in the double digits, where you can carry a weapon on the outside of your body. Well, if you're carrying a weapon on the outside of your body, and if that person is carrying a weapon on the outside of their body, and they're like, hey, good morning, how are you? You doing okay today? Everything good? Help you out with anything? Everything good? Is that person a threat? Right. So I'm not saying that you cannot carry weapons in certain parts of the United States openly like that. But I'm saying I want you all to figure out what's going on with that person and their intent. Now, if somebody has a weapon on the side of their body and they're like, you're not coming through here, that's a different mindset. They have the ability, they have the opportunity because it's on their side, and they have the intent because they said, you're just not coming through here. So that is a different level of it. Now, if a person has a holstered weapon versus a person who takes their hand and puts it on their weapon or takes that weapon out, that's escalated. So that's taking you to a different level of the threat. And that's what I want you all to understand. And these are the same things that you go through in training in order to be able to carry a firearm all around the United States. So I want you all to understand those elements: ability, opportunity, threat, ability, opportunity, jeopardy. I want you to understand the totality of it. So the individuals that we're greeting with this power of hello, that's how I want you all to start being able to do that, because that's going to figure out whether you need to go to that fourth step, which is obtaining help. Because you could have somebody come in, they could just be homeless. They could be living out of their car because they can't afford it. San Francisco's expensive. A cup of coffee is expensive in San Francisco. Everything's expensive here. So you just got to know, what are we dealing with? If you can't afford a roof over your head, that does not mean that you are a problem individual. That means you can't afford a roof over your head right now. All right. Yes, ma'am. Okay. The question that was posed, and I'm repeating it for online, was that so that would be a problem with the last element of that. So the question was posed, okay, we have a person to come in, and the San Francisco area, the Bay Area, California in general, statistically, you all have a very high concentration of Asian American individuals. I would say that's probably your largest minority, if I had to guess, followed by Latino of varying countries. So the question was posed, there is a lady who comes into the church who they tried to engage, tried to speak with. She didn't respond. She didn't respond openly. I assume that her behavior was also not very open and engaging. She was not smiling a lot. So I assume that it was very difficult to assess the intent with her. And how do you approach that? How do you deal with that? Well, if your church membership, we do have AMEs that are Asian American. We do have AMEs that are Indian American, Latin American. We have the full spectrum. So what is it that we're dealing with? Language barrier can be an issue. And I don't know what particular church or location. I know that Metropolitan, for instance, in D.C., that they also have some issues in there where they will have, not issues, but they have guests come in that are, I mean, they're right there in the heart of the district. And they will have people come in from all kinds of tourists, come in from all kinds of backgrounds, and there are probably language barriers, but they just want to see, this is America, this is what a church is. So they will come in during those church service hours. So then you have to assess it. You have to try to watch and figure out what's going on. When you have a language barrier, it's a problem. I am blessed to speak 4 languages, and in one situation within the second district near to my home, I went and visited a church, and this is coming around to the answer on yours. There was a Latino male who was there, and I saw and was able to speak with him, but he also had a language barrier, and he didn't understand what was going on. And his behavior, it was more of an apathetic look, because he didn't positively or negatively, he didn't understand what was going on. And I was not a member of that church. My church is First AME in Alexandria, but I was at a different church, and that church, interestingly, they have never asked me. They don't know who I am. I have walked into that church, and I have walked in because of the nature of my work. I have actually walked in armed at times. They still didn't know who I was. They didn't have any idea. And it's probably in part because I had that smile going on. But with that gentleman going on, I ended up walking out. He walked to his car, and he ended up leaving the property after church. He sat through the whole service. And he may have been just trying to feel it out. But if you don't bridge those language barriers, which is a lot of work with different Asian languages, with different Latino, and one of our 3 churches that we visited yesterday, they actually share space with people who are Latino, and they have their own church service going on separately. And that's open and that's engaging. And I would venture to say, without knowing and having confirmation, that there are times that the Latino community have probably come during the other church service and not understood everything that was going on, but they came in and sat down for a minute. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. You want to assess their behavior. You want to try to figure out what's going on. You want to greet them with a smile. Now, this whole Power of Hello, I'm going to put a big caveat on this. This whole Power of Hello program works almost always. It is not 100%. And the classic and tragic example of it is Emmanuel 9. Because what they did is they welcomed him, and he sat down through that entire service. Now, what a lot of people don't know is that Bible study really wasn't supposed to have happened that same way at that time. They were meeting with the presiding elder earlier that day. That Bible study ran late. Dylan Roof got stuck in traffic. And when he got to the church, he had actually told investigators later that when he got to the church, he didn't think Bible study was still going to be going on because he got there late. He got stuck. He was late. Bible study started late. In speaking with Reverend Simmons, Super Simmons' daughter, I learned that he would often carry his weapon. I learned that he had a permit and he would often carry his weapon. Well, it's my understanding that on that day that he was actually asked by Reverend Pinckney to not have it with him. So when some people who came late for the already late starting Bible study, Reverend Simmons was out in his vehicle putting away his weapon, which was found in his vehicle. So might it have been the Emmanuel 2 rather than the Emmanuel 9? I don't know. I don't know the order of who was shot. I've not gotten into that. But I can tell you that I have looked at that situation in depth. There's a book out there, Mother Emmanuel, written by Kevin Sack. I know Kevin Sack. I've spoken with Kevin Sack. Dr. Thomas, John Thomas III, he's actually done the intro and had us have conversations. But all of this is to say, I have looked at that situation in depth. Armchair quarterbacking, game playing it. And I will say, in all fairness to them, that I don't know that there's a lot that they could have done very differently. However, having the hindsight being 2020, what I would say, he did have a fanny pack. Now, a fanny pack, if you all don't know, that's one of the most common ways that people will carry it, and that's a bit of a red flag of something could be in there, and that's where he had his handgun, his Glock handgun, with which he did that. So he did actually have an indicator on him, and what I would say is if you have somebody come in with that, then greet him with that smile. Hey, how are you? Can we talk outside for just a minute? Can I ask you a question? Would it be okay if we just took a peek just to make sure you don't have anything in there? So if that had happened in the way that I might like for it to have happened, then that shooting might have happened outside those walls, outside a locked door. That might have been a reduction in the number of victims. Or at least it would have happened right there under the camera. So if you do happen to have a situation where you're speaking with somebody, try to speak with them in areas that you know are being recorded. So have that happen where there's extra footage of it. So try to make it opportune like that. But again, we're looking at possibilities of what can and cannot be controlled. So we're going to go a little bit deeper without getting too morose into the whole situation with South Carolina. We're going to go a little bit deeper into this second hour, and we're going to make it faster. Now, for those of you who may be fans of that 1978 movie, The Wiz, we're going to go behind the curtain here. We're going to look at what's with the wizard. We're going to figure out how to make this work for us. We're going to make this work. You all, every single one of you, will be the ones to begin the assessment process. When you do this, when you fill out the other document that you haven't received yet, when you fill out this other document, it is a template. It is a form. You will literally go in and put in the names and the identities of individuals. I don't want you to say hypothetically, oh, is that Miss Jane that is our nurse who she's been nursing for 35 years. Is she going to be the one in church that day? I want you to put in names. I know that there are physicians that are a part of the community here. I know that there are people, but Do you have them officially being told, I want you to have this role. I want you to lead the health mission. And they may be members of the International Health Commission, IHC. Are they the ones that you have in these roles that are officially written down that they're going to be there? Now, I know nobody takes vacations. Nobody travels to visit family. Nobody goes to see them grandbabies in different parts of this country, because you're always in church every single Sunday, right? So you don't have to have a backup plan because you are always in church. All right. So we're going to have a backup plan is the takeaway from this. We're going to put somebody's name in there when that's not happening. When you fill these out, these are going to get you the money. These are going to get you grant money, because we will do a full assessment. And when we do a full assessment, we're going to fill out this document. We're going to say, okay, this guy came out here and he helped us to identify doors that are sticking, hinges that need to be replaced, locks that are not in compliance. And these are small things that we've done. So when I come out a second time or whatever it may be, we're going to make sure that we are 100% where we need to be, or we're going to identify exactly for what we need the money, because we have already said we're in an area that has a higher crime rate, and we can show the statistics on it. We have called for police assistance because we had a guy trying to break out windows, and the police response wasn't optimal, and we have a copy of police report number 2025 such and such. So we're going to go down and we're going to be able to spell it out. There's not going to be a question. Now, if we are in the political environment in which our race or ethnicity may not be as receptive to the current administration, we will spell it out in other ways and say, this isn't a matter of race. This isn't a matter of because it's a black church. This is a matter of crime. The crime rate for this area is this. And this isn't an African Methodist Episcopal church. This is an AME church. So when you write it down there, make them do the homework. We're going to game the system their way. They don't need to know what it is. We aren't going to put down, this is Richard Allen Temple. We're going to put down, this is Allen Temple. Play the game. Make them do the work. That's how we're going to go through this. We're going to get you the money. Who exists within your church, your conference, your district? Who has this skill set? Who are your individuals? When you have a physician, do you also have RNs, LPNs? Do you have people who are EMTs, AEMTs? What is the skill set? PAs. Now, I know I'm going down a whole bunch of numbers, but all of those are medical professionals in the most basic term of that. When you have other skill sets, I've been to one area where we had a state director of emergency management that was present. I've been in another district overseas where we had a person who was the director of public safety right next door to Johannesburg that was we have this skill set. We have these people within our communities. We have Dr. Lisa Cook, who's a member, so Federal Reserve. We've got these people here. What resources are nearby you? What is nearby in your location here? Do you have the Office of Emergency Services Dispatch Center that's located less than a block from where your church happens to be? Do you have a firehouse that's 4/10 of a mile? That's a close response. If I am an insurance agency and I want to say, okay, well, yeah, this church is looking for fire insurance. How close is the fire department? Spell it out for them. Don't let them do the homework. See, your answer's right here. This should be a lower premium. We're right next door to the fire department. So where do you stand in the spectrum of preparation? Has somebody done a walkthrough and identified, okay, these doors need some work, this element is good? I want you all to have your own answers, because we're going to have it in this handout here. And then I want you to go through and fill out one of these in order to be able to do that. And Brother Peace and Love, if you could, sir, if you could help me out just by passing those out also, if you would, please. It's on his shirt, Peace and Love, because you all can't see that online. So if you want a digital copy of the same thing that is coming to your hands right now, or if you are watching us from online and you want to say, well, okay, how do I fill out this document? What is it that I need to do? You can go to this QR code, this quick reference code, and you can have a digital copy of the same thing that you're going to have here. This is a copy that you can share with other churches that are not here, perhaps not represented not represented here today from Bay Valley, you can share it with all of California. You can share it with the rest of the 5th. You can share it. I don't care. Share it. Get people prepared. I want our churches to be prepared. I want all churches to be prepared because we are softer targets. So when we look at this, we're going to go through and we're going to break this down. In the next couple of slides, we're going to have a more in-depth analysis of these churches. We're going to go in and look at all 3 churches. But before we look at all 3 churches, there's some more information that you have to understand about what we are looking at in order to understand, to get your toolbox filled up with what we're going to look at so that when you look at your church, you'll do so with an informed perspective. Now, when you go to this, it's going to pop up this slide from that hyperlink, and there are 2 links down there. One of them is a digital copy of the exact same thing that's in your hand with the slots in there. So if you do it from a laptop or a tablet, you can type in those names. Let me rephrase that. You not can type in these names, but you will type in these names of the individuals in your churches. I want you to put in the names, not think about. I want you to put in the names of the people that have these gifts, that have these talents, that have these backgrounds. I want you to say, hey, Sister Jane, you are always in church. I want you to help us out. I want you to help make sure that we get CPR certification, AED certification. CPR, of course, you know, is cardiopulmonary resuscitation, but AED is automatic emergency defibrillator. What that does, and I heard the discussion about whether or not having an AED is a problem from the insurance perspective. It is not. It is not. Having an AED on site, having AED training, it helps to save you time. It is not that you put on an AED and say, okay, we've put one pad here and one pad here. We don't need to call an ambulance because we're not sure. Call the ambulance. That is your first step. Obtain help. That is your first step. When a person goes down, loses consciousness, they are on the floor, their heart has stopped, their breathing has stopped, get an ambulance coming. Period. Full stop. And don't just say, someone called 911. That used to be the way that CPR training was done. Someone called 911. So Brother Grant, call 911. If he can't do it, if his phone's dying, if he's got something going on, if whatever reason he can't do it, he's going to say, Reverend Williams, my phone ain't working. You call 911. He's dealing with that situation. Do not just put it out there generally. And do not assume that somebody is doing it because you have a whole room full of people that said, well, I thought somebody was going to call. So specifically get somebody on that, okay? So that is our first step. I actually have gone ahead to the next slide already, but we're going to first talk about active shooter response and show you a brief video. What is the number one thing, I guess if you were looking at the screen already, you know this. What is the number one thing if an active shooter, if an active assailant, which is the other term, because it might not be a gun, if somebody is coming in and they are attacking, what is the first thing that should be in your mind? Run. Run. Get them shoes going. Whenever you walk into a place, all right, you ahead of me now. Let me push my little button. All right. So the first step is to run. Now, whenever you walk into any place, a restaurant, a hotel, find your exits. Thank you. Y'all could teach this thing for me. Find your exits. We got lots of exit signs over here, and they are very well lit and appropriately placed. Now, and I'm picking a little bit here just because we are getting into the fine points here. We got 7 different exits, visibly. We have 7 different exits from this room. Now, one of them is not going to be our best bet because it's blocked with the AV equipment. So we need to be aware of that, and even the sign says, please do not enter, but we need to be aware that there are certain limitations. Find your exits, know your exits, because what happens in the event of an emergency is you were just going to go. You're going to try to figure out where to go. You're going to try to push out. Everywhere in this building is perfect with it as far as the code for pushing out. I have been in some of our AME churches, and you need to acknowledge this, that in some areas, particularly smaller churches, smaller and rural, a lot of times, you are not going to have those doors open out. The code the code was actually in the 70s where people were told, hey, these doors have to open out. In the late 80s, early 90s, there was an incident at a club, a nightclub, where people were trying to get out. The band, there was a pyrotechnic issue. The band caught on fire. People were piled up at the door because the first few people were trying to push out, and they couldn't get out. And the people behind them were pushing, and they created a barrier. They created a wall where the door couldn't be opened, so hundreds of people died. So all of this is to say, make sure that you have your exits properly marked. And in a dark environment, which is another element of that nightclub, do you have things like glow tape on the floor? So if we have all of this lighting going on right now, you can put little glow tape around steps, trip hazards, things like that, so that people know. You can create arrows with glow tape so that when you have the lighting, if there is another path out of here, and there are other paths out of this room, then you make sure that there's enough lighting so that when the light goes, you still have arrows pointing on your path out, so that when that light is low, you can crawl in high smoke areas or in high panic situations. You can still find your way out. So the first solution is run. What if those paths, the only path, let's say the only path out of here, which would be a nightmare, the only path is that one door right there. You can't get out that door. You can't get out that door quickly. Or the brother sitting back there with the gold shirt on. I'm only giving you one of your two colors. If the brother sitting back there with his gold shirt on, he has to try to get to this door. He can't get over here quickly. Old gold. All right. So I can't see. You got royal purple over there with it? So he can't get out this door. So what is his next best bet? Get down, hide. Now, there is a difference between there is a difference between cover and concealment. Do we know the difference between cover and concealment? Okay, so cover is something that is more substantial. This wood right here behind me at the edge of the altar here, I know it's not technically the altar. So the edge right here is actually thick wood, but that's not going to protect every single type of bullet, every velocity of bullet. For a small, low-caliber weapon like a .22, .25, this would actually be cover. This is enough that a small bullet is not going to go through it. Now, a rifle bullet, it will tear right through this like going through paper. It will do nothing. So if your best bet with somebody who picks up a handgun, and it's better than nothing, is to get out of sight. Now, the other element, because I said cover or concealment is when you can't see. And if they can't see what they're shooting at, they're probably not going to hit it. It's not 100% guaranteed, but it's better than nothing. If you have a shooter who's standing right here next to the piano, next to the organ for some reason, they're standing and they're shooting from here, all of you all that are further out, if you get down, out of sight, I can't see where the target is anymore. What's even better with concealment is if you get down and move from your last known location. So when you get down, don't just get down and stay out of sight, but get down and move somewhere. Then if I shoot to where I last saw people, they may not be there anymore. There is an incident that's online on the internet that happened in Texas, Freeway Church of Christ, where there was a shooting there. The shooter and two members of the church were killed in that. Because there was an armed security element within that church that actually responded to that. But the guy comes in and he sits in the back corner, kind of like where your alpha brother is back there. And so he's sitting back there in the corner, but he was dressed in this winter in Texas. He was dressed in a way that was inconsistent. He had an overcoat on with a hood on in church. Well, to me, that's several red flags. The other people that you see, particularly in the camera angle, they have their coats sitting over the back of the pews, and so the coats are there. So it was warm enough in the church. He shouldn't have been dressed like that. So he gets up and he walks back to the back corner, and he says something to the brother, good size, black. I mean, this is a mixed race congregation, but he says something to him, and the usher, the black guy, he points toward the corner. I don't know whether he was like pointing to the restroom or something, because we don't have audio from that far away. but he points back to the corner. And when he does so, the guy reaches inside his coat and comes up with a long gun, like a shotgun, toward the usher. But then there's another person in the back standing right about where the lady with the Golden State sweatshirt on is. And she, well, in this case, he on the video, but where she is, he pulls back his coat and gets ready to come up with a handgun. Well, so you have this triangle. Well, the suspect then pivots away from the usher and shoots and hits the guy who was trying to come out of his holster with the weapon, and then pivots back to the usher. But after firing those 2 shots, he goes toward the front, and he only takes a couple of steps before he's shot by everybody else, because it's Texas, everybody else who had these guns, and he was down. So that situation was quickly resolved, but there were 3 people who died in that, the suspect and two victims in the congregation. So all of this is to say, if you can't get, but what you see on that video is everybody else got down. They got down quickly. Not too many people got down and started working toward the exit, but that's optimal if you can. Get down and start working your way out. Know where you're going. You got an exit there, you got an exit there, and you got to make sure that it's actually unblocked and not padlocked once you get down to the bottom of the stairs. But know your exits. Know where you can get out. Know your paths. I want you to do this. When you go out to eat at a restaurant, say, hey, I got to go to the restroom, and just check. Near your restrooms, there's usually another exit. In most commercial kitchens, for 2 reasons, there's always going to be an exit. One is so that they can take out the trash without having to carry stuff through, but also for a quick emergency in case there are fires. So this is what we are going to look at here. So the first response is to run. If you cannot run, I want you to hide in a way that you cannot be seen and cannot be hit. Mostly, I want you to not be seen and not be hit. Concealment is better than nothing. Cover, something substantial is your best bet. Thick wood, cinder blocks, get behind something that gives you more protection. If you cannot do any of these other items, I want you to reach in and you're going to flip that switch. And that's a serious switch, because when you flip that switch, it's no longer Mr. Nice Guy or Mr. Nice or Miss Nice Lady. You all are going to have to fight with everything that you have. You have to use that light post. You have to use whatever you have, and you are going to go at that person who is attacking everybody else with full intent to take them out. There is a higher probability that you may not make that. But you will be down in that news article, and you will be remembered for a long time as the person who saved all those other people. You may not make it, but you will have saved somebody else. Yes, sir. Okay, get out, hide out, take out, call out. I have not heard that one in corporate. Outstanding, I appreciate that. Get out, hide out, take out, call out. So 4 steps on that. I come from the government realm, and the next thing that I'm getting ready to show you is the FBI link on the slide, and you all will see it online as well as in person. I like also the get out, hide out, take out, call out, but it's a lot more words, and the government, we try to keep it simple because we got simple minds. So we got 3 words: run, hide, fight. But I'm telling you, whatever works, let that be your way to remember it. Run, hide, fight is the FBI one, and we're going to watch a quick video on this one where the FBI run, hide, fight. Hopefully, we can get this to work with audio and video, and we'll get good sound going. And I want you all to take, it's a very short video, only a couple of minutes, but it is a good FBI presentation of how you all can see how to run whenever you have that opportunity, hide when you can't, and fight if you absolutely have to with all you have. I'm going to try to get this link going, and we will see what we have here. Thank you, sir. Just 1 second.
Hi, can I get you started drinks? Oh, sorry, I gotta take this.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, can I get you started with drinks?
Oh, I'm sorry, I gotta take this.
We'll need a minute.
I'm here.
Sorry about that. Get that big for you. There we go.
Man, you need to back up. You can't be here anymore. Get out of my face, what, man. You think I'm afraid of you? Man, get off, man. 911, there's a clip.
Running makes you harder to hit and improves your chances of survival. Don't go up here.
Police, where is he?
By the bar, blue jeans, black shirt. Empty hands up, follow their instructions.
I'm in the direct line of fire if I head for either exit, but I have other options to help me survive. Guys, come on, in here. Come on. Go, go, go. Lock and barricade the door.
Both my exits are blocked by the shooter. I gotta stay hidden. I'm no victim. I'm ready for this.
He's applying direct pressure to the wound to stop the bleeding until we can find a tourniquet. In the meantime, turn off your phones and make a plan to defend yourself.
We have to fight to survive. If you control the weapon, you control the shooter. I'll go for the gun. He'll go for his arms. The bartender will go for the head.
Where is he?
We got him right here. Stand
Please,
down.
show me your hands!
Over here.
You can survive a mass shooting if you're prepared. Remember, run, hide, or fight. Run. Wherever you go, be aware of alternate exits. Quickly and cautiously evacuate in a direction away from the attacker. Don't hesitate. Seconds matter. Remember windows and emergency exits. Leave belongings behind. Keep your empty hands raised and clearly visible when exiting a building. Follow all instructions from the police. Don't stop until you're sure you've reached a safe location. Hide. If there is no safe escape route, find a good hiding place. Lock and barricade the door. Silence cell phones. Prepare a defense plan. Fight. Fight only as a last resort. Use available objects as improvised weapons. Use teamwork and surprise. A coordinated ambush can incapacitate an attacker. You're fighting for your life. Don't fight fair. Stop the bleed. A victim can die of uncontrolled blood loss in 5 minutes or less. Apply pressure or a tourniquet to control severe bleeding. Go to fbi.gov/survive to learn more.
All righty. All right, anybody have any questions off of that? Okay, so let's talk about fire safety real quickly. We're going to cover a lot of information. We're going to keep it going. In your individual churches, in your homes, we got smoke detectors, right? We got comedians galore on the internet, TikTok, Instagram, all of these that will joke about the fact that you want to know if it's one of our houses, a black household, you're going to have the chirp of that smoke detector because we didn't change those batteries. When are we supposed to change the batteries? Boy, we got all kinds of answers. But yes, more or less every 6 months because we're doing it on time change. Yep, so right. But I did hear some people say yearly. It may not last every year. But when you change one, try to change them all because you have the uniformity on that. That beep means to change it. It's not just like a nice background noise that we're supposed to have going on all the time. When you have smoke detectors, do you also have carbon monoxide detectors? Okay. Do we make sure that those are up and working? All right. In your homes, do you have a fire extinguisher? Do you have one near the kitchen? Outstanding. I mean, some people are going to be honest and say no because we don't all have it. If you happen to be like me and you got that smoker going on and you got that grill outside, you know, do you have a fire extinguisher also out near the garage or wherever you have that smoker? In the churches, do you know where they are? Are they properly charged? Do they have the indicator of being in the green zone because you got the red on both sides of it and you got the green? You got to make sure that's in the proper zone. Look at the inspection dates, and in order to make sure that they're proper with that. Do you have sprinklers or fire suppression heads? Do they function? Do they actually have the sensor in them so that it's actually going to break away? The fire suppression systems, the sprinkler heads that we have there, they're actually built so that when the heat trips it, it'll go and break open and then it'll spray. I've been in several places where the fire extinguishers don't, or the sprinkler systems don't actually have a water feed anymore. But people don't know it because they haven't checked it. So have somebody come and make sure that it's properly working. If you got a lot of wood going on in the locations where you are, make sure that your sprinklers and fire suppression heads are good. Do not stay and fight a fire. If you have a fire that is going, that is building, and you have fires leaping, particularly in a kitchen where you have the grease fire, you don't want to use a water fire extinguisher in a kitchen. If you spray, I mean, some of us have seen these commercials on TV Saturday morning and stuff like that. Don't spray water on that. That grease will spread. Grease fires will spread with water. But a foam fire extinguisher, they actually have different ratings, A, B, C, depending on what it is that you're dealing with, electrical fires, grease fires, or wood fires. And that will tell you what type of fire extinguisher. A fire extinguisher that's ABC covers all of it, and it'll put it out. So you got the foam that'll put it out. So that's a good option. If you cannot spray the source of the fire and work your way through it, it's actually top to bottom. So you're going to spray and work your way down until you get to what you believe the source of the fire. If that doesn't work, get out quickly. If it does work, still have that plan to get out. But if the fire is over here in this corner and I'm spraying it and putting it out, I'm still going to be looking at my path to get out of here because I want to have that backup plan if that didn't work. But depending on how quickly you get that out, will tell you how quickly you need to get out. You still want that fire department to come in order to make sure that it's good. So when you're dealing with fire, just like it shows right here on this screen, you want to look at that center indicator in that green zone in order to make sure. It may be a little bit to the left, it may be a little bit to the right if it's pressurized, but you want to make sure that it's somewhere within that green zone so that it's functioning. Look at the dates on it and figure out what month, what year it needs to be recertified. If you look at something, this looks like this might be concrete. This is actually wood that's here. Now, if you look at the beam across the bottom of the screen, that's actually a concrete beam, but it would confuse you. And if you've been in a part of this building where this photograph was taken, you could actually, as the group of us were, be standing there trying to look at it for a minute and go, no, that's concrete, no, that's wood. But you can actually see the chips of it right along it. You can actually see, yeah, this is wood, but it's painted to look like concrete. Well, just because it's painted to look like concrete and maybe water resistant, rot resistant in this bayside atmosphere with a lot of wood, that doesn't mean that it's fire resistant, which is why you have the sprinkler heads underneath. Most people don't pay attention to it, and unless your job is to travel around and talk to people like I'm doing right now, you are not probably going to be focused on all of that. Sorry about not having moved that mic back in earlier. Now, this room is awesome. This is your fellowship hall. So if you look at it here, you see the piping right up here, right up flush next to the beams, and you see the cross wood here. Now, what's going to happen is that heat is going to rise, and if you have a fire in that area, it's going to actually trip it and make those sprinklers start opening up. And we know that this should be properly functioning and this should be working because we came through and we thought about this. Well, take your heads and look up. Do you see the fire suppression up top? People probably didn't really think about it. So we're going to get this fixed. We've already identified it. But if you look up at the top of these beams right here, it should be similar to the configuration that you have going on in the fellowship hall. So we're going to get it fixed. The whole purpose of this is to identify the areas of weakness and strength, so we figured out what we need to work on. And the thing of it is, too, you want to have to deal with the aesthetics and keep it as nice as possible, so it may be a smaller tube with more sprinkler heads along the sides of it, but you want to make sure that it can spray out. The higher it is, the more support you're actually going to have as far as not allowing that fire to spread in those areas. So we're going to get that fixed. We're going to get that covered. Now, this is an example. This isn't even this church. This is an example of a good suppression system with the foam, the ABC that's going to come out of the top of the sprinkler heads, and it's also a vent hood. You'll see these in a lot of commercial kitchens, but it's going to suck the air out. It's going to suck because the air is also going to feed your fire. So it's going to get the air out. It's going to get the smoke out. But in the event that there's a fire that's out of control, there's enough heat that it's going to trip and open up those sprinklers, and it's going to put out that fire on top of there. So the whole church is not going to burn down because you have a good way to suppress the fire there. And if you don't know the kitchen well enough in order to know it, this station right here is a fry station, so that's even more of a concern that it could have the ability. It has a panel up in order to protect from the grease from splattering over here and causing a fire, but that's a fry station, so that's an additional area that is a higher risk for fire. Yes, sir? Fire extinguisher. A separate fire extinguisher from the integrated one. That was actually, I cheated, and that was the first that was the first photo that I showed you at that particular church. So they did actually have one there, and I included those two photos from that church just because it was a good, easy example of it. So what are your minimum safe distances? Does anybody have an idea? In the event of a fire, what is the minimum safe distance industry-wide? It's also true in corporate. And in the interest of time, you may be the one to get this. What is the minimum distance that you should be away from the structure? Minimum distance. 50? That was a good guess. Anybody else? 300, that's an outstanding answer, but that's not always a practical answer. Now, we're talking about fire evacuation. And I heard somebody else say it. It might have been Reverend Williams up here got the proper answer with 100. He's cheating. He's looking at my notes here. Your minimum is 100 feet for fire. That is a minimum. That is assuming that fire is going to spread, that heat. So if a building is fully involved 100 feet away from it, and fully involved means like this whole ceiling were to be on fire, flames spewing, embers, everything else, 100 feet is actually going to be close. You're going to be, even 100 feet away, you will feel this fire if this building were to be totally involved. So also related to fire and evacuation, if you have a bomb threat, what is the minimum distance that you should be away? There you go, 300 feet. Outstanding answer. So minimum of 300 feet. Why is it 300 rather than 100? Because an explosion is going to blow out all of that stuff and kick it out everywhere. So all of you all have already thought about, so you look at this packet that's sitting next to you, where that page number 11 is, and you say, okay, well, that really cool picture there, that's from a high-tech, I don't know if you all have ever used this high-tech software in order to get these kind of pictures. This is a really cool thing, very expensive too. It's called Google Maps. Google Maps is where you can put in the picture of your church, and you can do those little arrows and squares and ovals using another really expensive high-tech thing called PowerPoint. And you can put those on top of it, and you can say, okay, well, these are the minimum safe spots. These are the directions that we are going to head out. It's not on page 11? Okay. When you go online and the other, we will make sure that you get that. But if you look at the diagram, then if you look at this screen, this is an example of where you are going to go in order to go to safe spots. Now, if you are right next to the building, or even if you have 300 feet away on your property and you have that as where your dumpsters are, do not go stand next to the dumpsters. If somebody is a true DVE, REMV, whatever, if they are a true terrorist that intends to make a statement by truly bombing your location, if you are in San Francisco and you are happening to open up and try to embrace and get people in the Christian community that may actually happen to be LGBTQ, but you got people that are super conservative that are against you trying to reach out to them, then they're going to do what Eric Rudolph did at the Morningside Clinic in Atlanta. And when you evacuate your church and you go stand next to the dumpster, that is what he detonated. So what they do is they take you out to another location, and then they get you that way. So what does 100 feet look like? Well, I don't know if you all have ever been to this location, but this spot right here in the middle of this is called Bethel AME Church. And if you look down here in this corner, this little spot right here is what 100 feet look like. Yeah, that's 100 feet. Just right there in that little part. So you can take your hand and you can say, well, how do we get 100 feet away? What is our closest safe spot? Well, you got the Office of Emergency Services up here, which is a real good spot to be if somebody's, because they're the ones who are going to dispatch over there. But you've got Hayward basketball courts. Well, looking at it online, I was like, okay, well, there are gates up around here. But I later learned in getting there on person and getting there on the ground, which is why I do these visits, that they have 24-hour access to the basketball court. So you can get people okay and away from here. So your closest spot, the number one that I would recommend, is you're going to cross over and you're going to go across Golden Gate Avenue in order to get there. Now, if you have normal numbers, your ushers, your security, somebody should be able to help get you across the street there. But you're gonna stop traffic when you all are actually evacuating because you're just going to keep going. And you're just going to keep that flow. Even though the traffic light may change, you got 75 people crossing the street, you're going to stop. Plus, it's my understanding that pedestrians rule around here anyway. So, so these are the areas where you can go and you can evacuate from here. That is your number one spot. That is your best spot. Let's say that you have some issue going on here. What would your secondary spot be, do you think, without knowing whether or not, and admittedly, I did not check this out in going around and surveying, but what do you think would be a good second spot? Down there at Golden Gate near Webster, there are some tennis courts, or maybe paddleball, I don't even know. Was a pickleball, sorry, that's the thing. They may be what's down here, but you got some other courts down here. So if these gates are actually open, you all may want to consider that as a secondary location, or you may want to talk with the property owners and say, hey, in the event that we had to evacuate to your location, could you be our secondary site? So make sure that you establish your relationship with them. So let's look at a different spot. I don't know if you all ever been here. This one's Allen Chapel. So when you go to Allen Chapel, this is a very congested area without other fields that you can go to the same way. So you all would have to go all the way over here in order to get away. So this one requires a little more planning in order to figure out where your location would be. So you may want to look at other businesses. Again, your distance is only about like that in order to get away. There's no direction as a minimum that you could go away in order to have your group together and be shielded and be away. But I want you all to look at that as an option, is where could we go and what is our best plan? Because you got to figure out what that location would be. And I can't give you a simple solution because you don't have it. Sometimes if you have neighboring businesses, they may work with you. I'm sorry, grocery store? The Lynn chart? Okay. Rare enamel? To the right. Okay. I didn't see that one. It may not be at that zoom level where I can see it. But you got some options. So talk to your businesses. Have you established a relationship with your businesses in your area, in your community, where you say, hey, if something happens, I want to know whether you can be our evacuation location. Usually there are other businesses nearby, something nearby where you can do that. But this is a predominantly residential community, so that does create some challenges with that. And San Francisco is more congested. I mean, you're almost like Tokyo here with houses on top of houses. So let's look at the difference over here with Wright Chapel. You cross the street. You cross the street, you were good to go. You were golden. You were golden for a while because you got that whole park straight across the street. So these are the ways that we look at, okay, well, where can we go? How do we solve this situation? And again, this is high-tech equipment. This is Google Maps. You're going to take this and put this into your plan. Not theoretically, but practically. So what about the response time for different things here? So this one is from right here where we are. This is the fire department, station number 5. They're going to loop around, and it's a whole great big 4 minutes in order for us to come around with the fire department in order to come over to the church here. And the reason it takes that long, as close as they are, is because you got one-way streets. So they're going to get here quickly, and that is an excellent response time. And if you contrast that, so when I first looked at this, I was like, well, I'm not even sure whether the fire department's going to cover for over here for Allen Chapel. But right across the street over there, you have fire department or fire station 42 that's on the other side of the interstate, but you got a good path underneath the interstate. So again, we got a 5-minute response time. You are just around the corner. It's super fast. So this is well, it says 3 minutes. That's 3 minutes by a normal car. This is the time for them to get in their turnout gear and pull up the suspenders and get over there. It's about 4 minutes. So you got a great response time, provided that they're coming from the firehouse, which is usually where they are. And the last one, straight shot coming up the street there from Capitol Avenue. Again, you have a 2-minute response time, 2 to 4 minutes for the fire department there that's coming from station number 33. So you all are really good for fire with all of that. Now, EMS, what are we dealing with medical response? And I'm watching, Pastor. What are we dealing with medical response and our response time with EMS coming to us here? We have Zuckerberg, that is the Trauma One facility here for all of San Francisco. What does Trauma One mean? It means that they have somebody who is truly able to deal with trauma, and trauma is medical, like life-threatening situations, high scale. Bombs and bullets is what I'm used to dealing with the secretaries of state. So we're looking for Trauma One. So there is one facility from here that is Trauma One related for San Francisco. And the response times vary. Admittedly, I was curious when I was up in the air at 6 o'clock in the morning yesterday, and I was like, okay, well, what does it look like for the response time? It was 3 minutes for all of the churches at 3 o'clock in the morning over here. But that's not what it's going to be when you're normally driving. So from here, it could be 15 minutes in order to get to Zuckerberg on a good day, or maybe 20 otherwise from here to Zuckerberg. And that's not accounting for the ambulance coming here and going back. So you got to look at what is the response time, how long can people stay alive. You got to take all of that into consideration. The response times are shorter, interestingly, by about 5-minute increments all the way across, 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, with respect to the 3 churches that I visited. So who do you have as a part of your, my apologies to the physician's assistant, the A should be capitalized, but who do you have as far as your medical authorities within your church? Do you have them listed within that document? Because that document, I don't know if you saw it, it had slots for names where you're going to write them in, like actually put them in. Okay, so you're going to put in your in-house experts. Do you have AEDs? AED, again, it is not in lieu of a medical response. It is your fastest thing that will keep people alive. If you start CPR, it used to be that that the recommendations were 215, 215, 215, 2. Well, excuse me, 415, 215, 215, 2. So they wanted you to start off with 4 breaths and then do 15 compressions. What is the magic song? Staying alive, because that's exactly what you want them to do, is stay alive. And I know those of you all who've never done CPR were like, what is wrong with her? But that is the exact song. So that is the rhythm. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. And you're not just pushing with your hands like this. You want to actually use the heel of your hand with your fingers interlaced behind it, and you're leaning over the victim because you want to use your body weight. If you have ever had to do CPR, you are going to continue pushing up and down with your body weight. It takes a lot out of you to be pushing like that for that amount of time. If you think that 8 minutes is not a long time, try continue pushing like that for 8 minutes. It's going to take a lot out of you. So you're continuing to push and you're continuing to do that. Well, what they actually say now is you're just going to do compressions. Don't worry about breaths. Why? Because when you're doing those compressions, you are moving the lungs and the heart. So you're going to get enough air in there. Plus, circulating whatever is going on is better than nothing. You have already told a specific individual, not just the theoretical, Brother Grant, okay, call 911. So he's on it. And if not, he's delegated it. And your AED, what that is you're going to go over there and you're going to reach out to AED, and it's not going to be in a spot where it's safely away, but it's going to be mounted on the wall, because that's how we determined yesterday that we're going to have the AED here is accessible, so that when something happens, people know the AED is right there on the wall. I can see it. We know to get it. Because most of the people in our church are not 20 years old and athletes. They are 72 rather than 27, and so we want to make sure that we give them that chance of life. So when they drop and their heart stops, what you're going to do is you have to put these pads on clean. I apologize, because, whatever condition your chest and your belly may or may not be in, I'm not worried about that right now. I'm trying to get these pads on your skin. So one pad will go in the middle, and one pad will go on the side, the left side of the person, because your heart is in between these two. And your heart is not in the center of your chest. Your heart is slightly offset to the left. So you're going to put a pad here and a pad here. If your heart is pumping properly, then the AI that's going on, the artificial intelligence in that automatic emergency defibrillator, is going to detect that beat. And it's going to say, nothing administered, continue CPR. And so you're going to continue with the compressions. But if there is no rhythm, or if there's AFib, which is atrial fibrillation, if there's AFib going on and your heart is quivering and not working properly, then it's going to say shock is recommended. And it will tell you, stand clear, get off the person. It will repeat it a couple times. Do not hold on to that person when that shock is there, because it'll go through you too. So don't touch them. You're going to get back and stand clear. And it'll say shock administered. And when it does, it looks just like we saw on TV with all those medical things when we were kids, where you see that person raise up for a minute because it's sending the electrical pulse through them. So it's going to send that shock. And that may be what gets their heart started. But if it doesn't, it'll tell you, continue CPR. And so the AED is not only something that will help that person, but it will help remind you of the process. So have that AED out, have it accessible. Narcan, what is Narcan? Narcotics antidote. Narcotic antidote. There is a problem. There's a problem around here. There's a problem in the D.C. area. There's a problem nationwide with people using different types of narcotics. And it is not. And I'm not just saying people coming in here that are off the street that have the nod going on fentanyl, but I'm talking about people who this is a huge problem. For those of us that are fans of that movie and have seen Michael, the narcotic issues, it will stop your heart. Okay? And I'm not judging anybody who has developed over a course of time because of the amount of pain that they have to deal with. You may actually be taking narcotics. You may think, did I take that pill? Do not accidentally double up on narcotics. It will put you down. So be very careful with these pain medications. There are people that are on narcotic medications for legitimate prescription situations. If you have Narcan properly authorized on site, you give them a chance. If you put that Narcan that looks kind of like Afrin spray up their nose, if you put that up there and give them that and they didn't really need it, it's not going to do anything. So what this does is if a person is down because of that, you may have given them that chance. You may have brought them around, and it's kind of like an adrenaline kick that raises them back around and brings them back to life for just a second. So that's what you want to have on site is Narcan. When is it? What is it? How do we use it? You can get that. Get these in your churches. The other thing is how long do we have in a medical emergency? You got about 8 minutes maximum for an adult. You got about 8 minutes of no oxygen, no heartbeat, before that person gets to a point where their brain is no longer usable. So you got about 8 minutes. So the question of keeping some of these medical supplies off site where you got to go and get them and come back, that's time that you should have as a part of your response. So you've already had Brother Grant over here calling for your medical, which is they should be on the way, and you've already started that process. You've saved a life with that. So I want you to get this going. We already talked about calling a specific person to get it done. What about stop the bleed that they talked about in that presentation? How do you stop the bleed? Pressure. Is pressure the answer equally across for everything? How do pressure answers differ? What is a capillary bleed? What does a capillary bleed look like? If you bump your head, that's really interesting because you're going to see a lot of blood and you're going to think that person is just, it's the end of the world. You got a lot of blood vessels, capillaries that are up here near the surface, and you're going to see a lot of blood, and it's going to scare you. It's really going to scare you. But you probably, other than the fact that you bumped the head and may have a hematoma or a concussion going on, it's probably not the end of the world, but it's going to look scary. So be very careful if somebody bumps their head and how you respond to that. But the other thing that you want to keep in mind is the venous blood. So if you nick a vein, you're going to have a steady flow, just trickling out. There's going to be a lot of blood. I have not included it in here, but I had a situation back in January, right around MLK Day, when my young 11-year-old son was upstairs and he was messing around with a 3D printer that we have in our house. And he was using this little thing to clean off the scraping plate. And when he did that, he started yelling, "Dad, Dad, Dad." Well, I'm on the second floor where the kitchen is because we got a little townhouse, a little simple townhouse. And so I'm standing next to the thing, and I was like, it's like some bug or something like that that's upstairs. And he comes downstairs, and I can see the fascia. Fascia is actually the fatty tissue up underneath. He had cut so deep that I could see that coming out of there, and I saw a trickle of blood. And I'm trying to stay calm in my head. And granted, I have trained for it and do train others. And still, I'm like, okay, well, we need to stay calm. So I get a T-shirt, and I put that over on top of his wound and raise it up above his heart because you want it to be above the heart. There's less blood flowing to it than if you have it below your heart where the gravity is working with you. So I put this up here, and he's like, "Dad, can I still play football? Am I going to be okay?" And I'm like, "Buddy, hold on. Take a deep breath. Breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. that actually helps with the vagus response. It calms you down. So I actually have the because I do have cameras in my house. I actually have the video where it's like, take a deep breath, buddy. You're going to be okay. Do we need 911? Do we need to call an ambulance? I'm going to take you because there's a shorter path for me to get him in the car and take him. But I want you to breathe. I want you to take a deep breath. So I got him to the ER, and they were looking at us and the way that I'm talking to him, just like I'm talking to you now. And the ER people are like, what is going on with these two? But we got the proper response going on. So even in my house, I'm actually doing that. Well, that's a slow trickle. That's the venous bleeding. What happens when you have blood that is pumping? That is arterial. That's a bigger problem. I know that not everybody in this room may get down like that, but, being the bruz like I am, I'm about some chicken. And I cook it, I eat it, and if you've ever prepped some chicken and you get an artery, arteries are about like rubber bands. And what happens when you cut an artery, there are a couple of spots in your body, brachial, femoral. So the carotid and jugular, that's a whole different story, unless you're in a Charlie Kirk situation. But the brachial and the femoral, when you cut those, what happens is they pull away because they're like rubber bands. So if I have a cut straight across here in the brachial, or even down here, it's going to pull in. It's going to pull closer to the heart. So the answer is what you do, kind of like with CPR, you're going to do that hand width thing. So you're going to go the hand width from wherever the cut is. You're going to go a hand width, and inside that is where you're going to put the tourniquet. There are two different types of tourniquets. I keep one in my kit, kind of like the kit that you all are going to have because you all have been in this class. So you all are going to take and get one of these kits with a tourniquet. You're going to have something like Quick Clot. You're going to have a weight. Now, with this tourniquet, it's about like a belt. And if you don't have a tourniquet, your next best bet is a belt. So you're going to cinch it up and cinch it tight. Well, this tourniquet, once you slip it up here, close to the armpit, or up here close to the groin, if it's a cut that's across the leg, you're going to turn it, and you're going to keep turning it until it's tight and like the faucet cutting off that water. I don't want to see any more spurting because you have to cut off that blood supply. Now, if you're in a place or at a time where you have good response, that Trauma One Center has 24 hours, 7-day-a-week surgeons on site. That's the reason that they're Trauma One. If they don't, then you go down to Trauma 2, Trauma 3, Trauma 4. And they don't have all those people on site all the time. So at a Trauma One center, you get taken over there and you have a cut like that that's deep and it's arterial. They actually have a vascular surgeon, and that surgeon can give you a chance so that you don't have that arm amputated. There is a chance that they can cut in, do the surgery, reconnect it, put in the tissue, and you might still have your arm. Now, if not, I am sorry. I am sorry that what we had to do is put on a tourniquet, but you are going to be alive to cuss me out later. You are not going to be dead because I didn't put that on there because I wanted you to have a pretty arm in your casket. So we are going to put that tourniquet on, and we are going to have that chance that we're going to lose that arm. So that is what a tourniquet does for you. All right, so we're going to go to the next slide if we can. All right, so where do you get the training for this? You can go to a link just like this, and these are classes that are nationwide. They are always going on. Now, it was a little bit of a surprise for me because if you go to this hyperlink and you look at this, there are no classes that are being taught in San Francisco proper, to use that term. But there are a lot of classes that are still close, like San Jose and things like that. You're going to have to drive a little bit, but there are classes that are available. Well, how many classes are we talking about? Well, this is taking a peek, and this is a search that I did either yesterday or the day before. You have classes on May 26th. It costs $50. And that may be because it's the Bay Area. You got San Jose twice. You got Palo Alto. It says $50 with Ms. Chitra Patel. But a lot of places, and the rest of them do say that, like Menlo Park, no cost for that class. You got to get to Menlo Park, but there's no charge for the class. So you got Santa Rosa. Right, I'm hearing that's close. So you have this free training to stop the bleed. You have these opportunities to get these classes with a great big cost of $0 other than $7 in gas in order to get to them. So you all have the opportunities for this training, okay? So that lets you to take a picture of the dinosaur, do your link, get to your class, get your ushers there, get your security there, get your people in there in these classes. It costs you nothing. All right. So what is the response time? We talked about the drive times. You're talking about like 20 minutes, well, 15, 20 minutes from here. You're talking about maybe 8 minutes in order to get there from Allen Chapel, and you're talking about 12 minutes in order to get there from over there at Wright Chapel. There are people besides me traveling around doing this roadshow thing. There are people who are called PSAs, not your prostate-specific antigens, but your protective security advisors. Your protective security advisors are these people who have regional responsibility. Region 9 is a good chunk of the 5th District, but that's Arizona, Nevada, California, and also Hawaii. And the person who's in charge of that can come out and do assessments. They can come out and do training also. They are with Department of Homeland Security, which recently was refunded for parts of this. However, CISA, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Agency, is they still have some funding issues because a particular president wanted to reduce some of what the Department of Homeland Security has with things like CISA and training and getting people prepared, and wanted to put some of that other money into places like ICE. So what we have is Region 9. So if you want to reach out to these people here in Region 9, they can help you with surveys, assessments, training. It is CISA Region 9 at cisa.dhs.gov. So you reach out to them and say, hey, I want to find out about some training. I want to find out about how we can do this here in this area. Their schedules are busy because they are not dedicated individuals like me dealing with the AME Church. They deal with everybody and whoever reaches out. So if you don't get cooperation and you reach out to me and say, hey, I reached out to them, but it's been a year and they haven't answered me, I will reach out to their bosses, and then their bosses will reach down to them and say, what's going on? How do we not have that going on? We do have an official relationship with DHS. We are one of 4 religious organizations that have an official relationship and tie with them, in part because of Emmanuel 9. So this is what they deal with. They help training. They help conducting all of this. Now, we're going to quickly go through and look at, because you all are now better experts on it, we're going to quickly go through and look at some of the strengths and vulnerabilities of these, and then we'll have a break, a final exercise, and then we'll get out of here. So we're going to look at this church. We see some of the good and bad. We see the distance, and over here toward the left side of the screen, we found out that the tennis courts can be used as an evacuation spot if we have to. So what are the pluses and minuses? Again, this is me. Before I came here, I pulled all this from Google Street View. So I see a lot of glass over here. I see a lot of panels. So how do we make glass safer when you have the potential for glass to come in, particularly if you have bombs from the outside? I also noticed that you had the gate over here with some pedestrian access. You have a call box over here. It's climb resistant, but not climb proof, because a lot of true criminals, they will either take a coat or a blanket, they will throw something up on top of it so that they can get up over it. But this is still a deterrent. It's a little bit of an enhanced response to it. Plus, you got cameras all around here, which are really good with this. So this church is really good with a lot of the precautions that are here in place. And I did not know, because I wasn't thinking about the number of addicts that are walking around the streets and stuff, I did not know about people like sleeping in these different areas. But again, we now know CPTED, crime prevention through environmental design, we can put in some of those prickly things in order to make them less attractive to people who are trying to come in and do that stuff. Now over here at this gate, which is the one right down here at the bottom of these stairs, We need to make sure that there's a way to get out of that if you have to evacuate out when church service is going on, when the building is occupied. You want to make sure that that is an alternative exit where you can clearly get out. But since we have people that are trying to sleep, we also want to make sure that the people are not up in there laying out, urinating, defecating, things like that up in the corners of our property. Church doors are good. 3 out of the 4 doors actually have crash bars. Could the last one also have a crash bar? Yeah, but I mean, the reality of it is if everybody were trying to get out of here in the event that it's nighttime, you had something going on, nighttime revival, and you're trying to push the doors, if you push on 3 out of 4 of these doors, you're going to end up pushing on the other. This is called a crash bar because not everybody pushes with their hands. Now, a lot of times what we see when we look at these locks and doorknobs, and you're going to see it in a couple of slides, is you have small stuff where you try to turn a little doorknob and you have a little tiny thing on it. Well, the human body, in a crisis situation, we go to what's called gross motor skills. You stop doing little fine movements. You start fumbling with things. You don't know how to get out. Your brain goes into a panic mode, a survival mode. So you got to have large stuff. If you can't even push with your hands, but you bump it with your body, you're still going to get out these doors, which is why we want things like crash bars, panic bars, as they're called here. So this is a blessing and a curse on the outside of these doors. If somebody were to really be trying to target you, then you have these big handles that are actually, they could potentially be chained closed. But that's somebody that's got real ill intent. So I would say for the greatest part, especially where you have an external security element that's walking around and taking looks at stuff, you can prevent this. If you really want to make sure that you have a double backup going on, then keep a set of bolt cutters on site, and then you have bolt cutters in order to be able to remove it if somebody does try to put something on there. But you got cameras going on as options here. On these doors, off the fellowship hall, up on the side, there are no external ways to get in. So if police officers had to respond for an active shooter situation, if firefighters had to get in, you want to have a keyed lock and a way to open it from the outside. But as long as you tell people, don't keep propping these doors open, don't go in and out of these doors, you still have a way that keeps that from being a problem. So this door being propped, you want to have an external crash bar on it is great, but you want to have an external way to open it up if you have to get in that way. Let's look at Allen Chapel real quickly. So Allen Chapel right here is on the corner. We already said it's a primarily residential area. This was me looking at it beforehand. I was like, okay, you got lights on the outside. You got lights here, here, here. The lights do work. The LEDs on the outside. You're in great shape with that. This is an old picture of the parking lot because it's now got a different use going on. But this was 2013, so this is really old. So the school is going on, and you got a school again on site next door to it. So the fencing, this is 2011, but there was not an updated option. When you look at the Google View, as I do with all of these churches, you usually have a pull down of look at the most recent picture, but this was the most recent that Google View had on that. So I did not know. They have a better fence going on with an automatic gate opener, and so there are other options. So it's definitely upscaled with that. And this is the entrance to the fellowship hall up here on top. Just got to make sure that door gets propped, but we'll look at that in just a second. So when I went on site, looks much better, and it's a deterrent for people trying to get in there, trying to get close to the church. The lighting in here, great. The cameras, great. We got crash bars in order to be able to get out. We also have door sensors and alarm systems. All 3 churches had door sensors and alarms. This is great. We have, now this is one thing that I had not expected. In addition to having the motion sensor, the cameras, the evacuation lights that are over there, and on the outside of your floodlights, make sure, thank you, ma'am. Make sure that you push the little sensor in order to test them periodically. If you just touch in and push it for just a second, it'll give you a quick flash in order to let you know whether the lights are on and properly working. Now, if you look at these wooden doors, these are great. You don't have to have something like this, but in this configuration, this is great. So whether you had to push in or push out, that's the double direction hinge. So it's a swivel hinge either way. So that's a great option. And the fact that I know people are like, well, do you really want to have glass in your doors in and out of your sanctuary? Yeah. So you can see whether somebody's waiting to come in with your ushers so that you can see whether somebody's waiting to come out. It's not any extra of a risk. Glass does pose a different hazard, but not in that quantity, not that we really need to be worried about. The doors, great. Crash bar, great. Door sensor, everything's looking good there. This door, we did actually discover that the people who shared the use of the property, they had actually not had that one closed back. So check your doors, particularly in a church like this where you have a lot of doors, and I'm told that they are actually told to go through, check it, make sure that they close, make sure that they work properly. Now, right here, as I happen to be standing in front of it, there's a door that that goes to the ramp, the handicap accessibility ramp. So we want to also label that as an emergency exit option, and that is the one door that does not actually have that as the emergency exit option, but we identified that. We know that we're going to work on that for here. So we're going to have that going on. But back to here, again, just make sure that they close, make sure that they're properly functioning. When we got to Wright Chapel, we're doing well. So this 2015 picture, this house, the reason that it looks like, what is dude going on where he's got these funky looking pictures? You got blur here and blur here. Those people have asked that their residences, their locations not be shown. So they looked blurred. And it looks kind of funky when I'm trying to take the pictures from the internet in order to do that and look at the condition and the paths on the sides. So when I go in person, this is actually a great option. It costs a little less money. But the LED lights that are up there as an option, they're very bright. It's a great option. But there are different ways that you can do that. Now, also at the door, right there where you see Pastor's back, you have a Ring doorbell. That one is not hardwired. So the way that the Ring doorbells work, you got to change it out and you got to recharge them periodically. The frequency with which you're recharging a Ring doorbell, I don't know whether any of you all have them at your home, but how often you have to recharge that battery depends on whether you have a lot of traffic in that area. If this is along a pedestrian street, you're going to have more people walking by. You're going to have a little bit more foot traffic. You have the potential to have to change the battery more often. You can buy a replacement battery so that you keep one charging and you replace with those, and that is a great option. Or you can hardwire it, which requires a little bit more work, just because it's going to have a constant feed to it. But you can then set the Ring camera on a greater sensitivity so that you see more of the potential activity. You see more people walking by, and you have a better response for that. They have an internal Ring camera also, which again is catching pedestrian movement, people walking around. But if you don't have a lot of people walking around with great frequency on it, then I think he said that you only have to change it about every month or so with not as many people walking through. So figure out how often you need to change it based off of the volume there. Again, a great alarm system. I mean, I'm impressed that you all have those going on. A lot of churches don't have them, or like I said, they will have people who said, yeah, well, the pastor, it costs too much, and we got a one-room church out here in the sticks in Tennessee. We haven't needed it. We haven't used it. So make sure that you have your equipment working and properly functioning. This is an example of one of the door handles that I'm talking about. We want to have door handles because people can't figure out how to unlock that in the event of an emergency. And it's not a knock on you. It's just the fact that we don't go and change this because we don't think about it. There's something that's called a paddle, a push paddle, where you can push it in order to get out. That is one option. But I realize that these options cost money. So we're going to look at it and we're going to figure out step by step what our priorities are. We're going to make sure that the hinges on our doors are properly working. And it's humid around here. You're in the bay. You get salt water and you get, these affect our hinges. So we got to figure out how to make the doors and hinges work properly, because you got to be able to get out of the doors and hopefully be able to close them back if they're properly working. So these are steps in order to get that. So we want people to get out of these. Now, what are lock options? If you go at this and look at lock options, I'm going to come back to this screen in just a second. This is a comprehensive website called McMaster-Carr. And this is like, okay, if I had a dream list of what different options I could use in order to keep my church safe, in order to go with different lock options, this is a list of websites. This is almost like the government kind of master list of it. These are different types of options of which you can do. If you want to look at, for your trustees, stewards, if you want to look at different lock options, this will take you to the website where you can say, okay, well, can we afford this one? Is this one an appropriate one? Do we have people that will have to remember codes? Do we have a way that we can get in and out? Is this a good keyed lock? It will give you every option that you could conceivably want. And then you can take those recommendations and you can look at it on Amazon and see if you can get a better price. So look at that comprehensive list of lock options and say, okay, how do we need to go with this for our area? All right, get you out of here in just a couple minutes. Matter of fact, we're going to push through and we're going to do our exercise and then we'll just be done. Shatter-resistant window film. I mentioned this yesterday, SRWF. This is stuff, in the State Department, we had a situation in Africa, in Nairobi, Kenya, and in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, where in 1999, an attack occurred where they set off bombs outside. And so people were like, oh, what's going on? And so everybody got curious, and they went up and stood next to the windows. And that's when the secondary went off. And when you're standing in those government buildings, in those embassies, and that secondary goes off and that bomb goes off, all of those shards of glass were like knives and went through. Hundreds of people died in those two attacks, back-to-back attacks. Hundreds of people. So how do we prevent all of those pieces of glass from coming through? We put stuff on here, shatter-resistant window film, that looks about like window tint. It is window tint, but it's thicker. And the thickness of the millimeters will actually keep your stuff together. So you get a proper technician to put that on, seal it up, scrape it over, get out the bubbles. So 2 millimeters, it's not going to give you as much protection, but it will give you some. 12 millimeters, it will break the bank on how much it will cost you, but it will also give you great protection. And that's the kind of stuff that government buildings are using, is like 12 millimeter, where 12 millimeters is thick. So you cannot, rocks, bricks, things like that, it's not going to come through. I don't know the exact specs because even if I did, I couldn't say that I did. But the Beast has stuff similar to this on the side of it. The thickness of the glass on the presidential limo is similar to this type of stuff, in addition to the glass itself. So what does it look like when something comes through? Without film, you'll have little pieces of glass come through. With film, provided that it's something smaller, it just keeps it together. If you have a blast to the point where somebody has come up and parked a bomb right next to the side of this building, that whole sheet will come in. So that whole thing, it'll knock you down. And your ears from the percussion and everything, you will be deaf for at least a little while, if not longer, because of the explosion being just outside. But that whole thing is going to knock you down rather than all those pieces of glass going through you. So shatter-resistant window film is a good step for you all to consider on windows like these along the side of the building, and these that can help give you that extra tier of protection. I've been to 2 churches where the pastor's offices also have a whole bunch of windows to it. You want to consider that as an option. Yes, sir. Stained glass windows are going to be a little bit more of a challenge, but in most cases, like this, it's going to be really hard to get an angle where that's going to be a risk. If something were to blow up from the lower level, it's going to come up with the blast direction. So it's not usually, from what I have seen in most cases, it's not going to be an angle where the stained glass is really going to necessarily be what comes in. And on the back side of stained glass, you could still put shatter-resistant window film, but it's going to go on there a little bit differently. At St. Andrew in Memphis, we actually looked at that because they had such large panels there. Even though it's not over the sanctuary, it's over the outer hall where people would be feeding into the sanctuary. So I recommended for them, as an example, shatter-resistant window film. And what does it look like when it's struck? There's a video there. We are not getting into it, but this stuff is called Lumar sometimes, or shatter-resistant window film. If you want to look at the prices, if you want to take a picture of that and look at the prices, that will give you all an idea as to what you're looking at there. But we're going to wrap this up in just a second. Floodlights. There are options that really depend as to what you have going on. So in places like Wright Chapel, I would say where you can have everything together, you don't have to invest in your own separate high-tech security system, but you can have some smaller all-in-one motion sensor camera options like this. Ring Corporation, because you already have Ring, has some great options. Granted, this is 119, but you have, when somebody walks by, it will detect their movement, turn on the light, and give you the camera image all at the same time. So you have all-in-one with the Floodlight Cam Plus. So what are the prices like, or what are you getting with these prices with the Floodlight Cam Plus? With this, you have 1080p HD video. Well, all of you all out here in the tech world, you're in the high-tech area, you all know 1080p is not the level of 4K. It's an okay image, but it's not the level of 4K. So 120, you get 1080p. 169, you actually get something where you could go into a courtroom and say, yes, we know for certain that is who that person is. So work within your budget. Know what you have, know what you want. And the difference also is the type of light. You're going to a higher scale LED light, 3D motion detection. So 170 may be something that you want to consider. And you can replace your existing hardware with the floodlights with that. I know 170 is still a couple of meals or at least 2 cups of coffee out here in San Francisco. But you all can get this Floodlight Cam Pro going on from Amazon with that 170. So again, protecting houses of worship. The documents that you all have here, these are going to help you out. There are some other website options with things like bomb threat charts. Now, the thing about bomb threats, they get really complicated now. Back in the Stone Ages when I was young, if you call a church, you're going to dial directly. You're going to get the landline number. You're going to call the church office, the administrator. You're going to reach a person sitting in an office, and you're going to say, okay, hey, may I help you? And you're going to say, okay, you have a bomb in your location. Now, you call a number on a website, because we didn't even have websites back then, not like that. So you call a website number, and that church administrator, wherever they are, that's their cell phone number, probably. Or it's some other number, the pastor's number, somebody, depending on the size of the church, where you're calling them and they're off site. So you may tell them that there's a bomb in the building. They may not be in that building. So the bomb threats are kind of different in how we have to deal with them now, and that's probably part of the reason that we have less bomb threats. Less, but not zero. If you remember a couple years ago, we had all the HBCUs that were getting targeted with bomb threats. Again, the extremists are trying to do that. They're trying to push that with that agenda. They want to see the reaction on it. But when you go to that website from that link that you just took a picture of, these are some of the things. Suspicious activity. I want to know about it. I want to be able to say, okay, we have vandalism. We have people hanging outside. We have men and women that are coming into the sanctuary that are having this weird behavior. We have an Asian lady that came in here one week at your location. We have a Latino male that came in doing the exact same thing at your location. How, is this a pattern? So if we know about this, if you communicate this to me, I will make sure that we get the appropriate response on it. The emergency action plan guide, which you have in your hands, is filling in the blanks on that. We're going to go through, we're going to figure that out. We're going to say who has the responsibility in the background to fill in all of these duties. Who is it that is going to go through and check and make sure? Sister Jane, you have the medical background. Brother Bobby, you have that security background. Brother Derek, you worked with the fire department, so all of you all have these different duties. Brother Derek, how's that sprinkler system going on? You on top of that? And so, go through. Do we have our AED? Go through. You have to have the proper person in these roles in order to go through and figure this out and get all the boxes checked. If you don't have a security team at your location, and I don't give all of my rural areas enough props all the time, Mississippi, of all the states, Mississippi, I have to give them real credit for this one. They came up with the Mississippi Church Protection Act. And this was an interesting thing, because this Mississippi Church Protection Act, and you can write it down or go to that link, it actually says, okay, for our in-house security team, what are the qualifications and traits that we want people to have? So we don't want somebody who's just been hunting since they were knee-high to a grasshopper, for those of you all who lived out in the country, that not just knee-high to a grasshopper, but they have actually the background of prior military, prior police. They will go through and say, the Lautenberg Amendment, this person has been convicted of a domestic violence, they can't be a part of this, they can't carry weapons. So it will tell you what criteria you want to look at for this. So you want to go through. This is a great example of it, and it spells out what the criteria are. So now, in our final thing, do we have anybody in here who currently serves as a greeter, or somebody who is the first face that people are seeing, new faces come into their church? Anybody? Don't all raise your hand. Outstanding. Thank you, ma'am. There we go. We got one. Do we have anybody who serves as an usher? Okay. You do double duty? Okay. Do we have anybody who serves as security? Okay. We got awesome. Okay. So, Brother Grant and you, ma'am, we're going to get you all two together. So here's what we're going to do. In our final thing, just so that you all feel comfortable seeing it and how it works, you, ma'am, are going to greet me as an unknown. Now, I told you all that I have been in some churches where I go in and they have never said a word to me. I've been in Metropolitan, and I get emails every Sunday from Metropolitan. I'm not a member of Metropolitan. I go in there periodically because I try to give everybody equal love there. But at Metropolitan, I walked in that door, and the mighty men of Metropolitan, that's what they call theirs, those are the greeters. And they're like, hey, how you doing? I haven't met you before. You in it? We get you on the mighty men. And I'm like, okay, great, thank you. And they didn't know who I was. Metropolitan actually has a full uniform security team. They're very impressive with theirs. But not everybody is going to have the resources and the need for all of that. But what we're going to do right up here and in front of the elders is what we're going to do is we're going to have a small skit where we're going to get you, ma'am, to greet me and ask me some questions, figure out what's going on, whether it's my first time here, what I might be doing. I know you volunteered. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate that. Not everybody will volunteer. Thank you. I appreciate it. And you, sir, you're going to be the background unless and until she lets you know that he needs to step in because there's something going on. And I want everybody to kind of be the eyes and ears. I want you to be observing, which is the first step of that oh no. And I want you all to figure out what's going on. And we're going to very briefly afterwards talk about the pluses and minuses, and we're going to get you all out of here so you all can go watch the 50ers or 49ers or whatever. Yeah. All right. Okay. Okay. All right. So, ma'am, if you can, we're going to come up here and just do your thing. Do your normal thing. And we're going to figure out what's going on. And you, sir, you're going to keep an eye on her to make sure she's doing right and make sure everything's going on okay. Yes, ma'am. Okay, yes, ma'am. Well, you just doing your thing. Yes, ma'am. How you doing? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I forgot we still have someone online. I got it. Thank you. It is.
Normally, when someone comes in, I just say, good morning, welcome.
Oh. There we go. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome.
A little higher. There you go. Just hold it up. And then,
Good morning.
good morning, ma'am. How you doing?
Fine. How about yourself? How are you doing?
I'm okay, thank you.
Good, good. Well, welcome. We're glad to see you this morning.
It's good to see you.
Yes. And then I'll usher you in.
Okay, okay. That would be the normal amount of conversation that you would have. So what I would suggest is this your first time here? Where are you visiting from? Are you AME? What district? Just some questions. Where
Well,
you could,
normally when they come in, it's right before service, so we do that later. I'm
Okay.
just welcoming you and, hospitality.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
and
ma'am.
Glad
And
to
time
see
can be
you.
tight.
Right.
yes, ma'am. I appreciate that. And that's a great example. But if we can try usually to make, especially since depending on how close it is to the start of service, they're still going to have other opportunities to come in and sit down because the ushers may have it so that they can't come in at that particular point. But you just ask a couple extra questions because even though it may seem like you're taking more of their precious time and getting to the pew, that's also where you're trying to evaluate what their intent is and try to figure out, is this their first time there? Do they have other issues like maybe a language issue, like the Asian lady that we were talking about? We don't know what language it is. We don't know what her is. So, hey, good morning. How are you? Mm-hmm. Or like the lady at my little brother's church who just didn't want to shake my hand, didn't want to have anything going on. Well, then that's a little more concerning, not alarming, but why is she not wanting to shake my hand? Why is she not wanting to interact when that happens? And then the other thing is,
Gosh, I'm on.
yes, ma'am, we are on screen. You live. So I'm coming to you, sir. So what we're going to have is also we would let Brother Grant know, okay, well, this brother, he has a pocket knife on the side. Is a pocket knife a problem in California? No. Interestingly, California does not have any blade length restrictions or anything like that, but you can actually have something on the side. So we want to let Brother Grant know. I don't know what his background is. He may be a former police officer. He may be a firefighter. But he's got a knife clipped on his side for some reason. So we're going to let him know so that he's just aware of that. So these are the types of things that we want to communicate with that. But I appreciate that was a great example, and that's how you normally greet. But yeah, these are the things that we want to know. So we're going to ask a little more probing questions in order to try to get a little bit more from them. So we're going to try to go a little deeper with our normal questions, even if it gives a little extra time before they get to the pew. Just, hey, how are you? Where you from? It's your first time here. You from the Bay Area? Just put that syrup on. Just pour it on thick. Just pour it on thick. Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
But then the next question is, if I suspect something, where do I go from here? Because we don't, in my church, we don't really have security. I'm probably...
So if you don't have a security team yet, even though you will because you have the Mississippi guidelines for how to set it up now. So even if you don't have a security team yet, who is it that you would normally communicate a concern to in your church? Is there some individual? Is there that young man who's such and such's son that's always at church? Is there the pastor? Who would you communicate a concern to if you said, I just don't know. This person is not answering questions. They aren't speaking English. They aren't answering me. I don't know what's going on with them. That next level of who you would take that to, of that concern, because that's where I want you to go. From today, I want you to feel comfortable with taking that to that next person because your job is to get that first information and then pass that off.
Okay. I got it.
Yes, ma'am. But great job. Thank you. And I'm gonna get the question. I think the mic won't be a problem, but I'm gonna get the question from the back of the room here. Oh, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. We're gonna stay on camera for those that may still be logged on. I apologize for keeping you all a little bit longer, but we're wrapping up, and hopefully we've covered a lot of good information. I promise you, this is the end.
Yes, and,
yes, sir.
I just couldn't tell from the back when she first walked up to you. Was your hand in your pocket?
My hand definitely touched it because I was thinking, do I still have this here? Because I intentionally had clipped it there. But yes, if my hand had been on it, that would have been of greater concern.
Okay.
And I do understand and appreciate that, because that takes it in that triangle that we talked about: ability, opportunity, jeopardy. Why is he touching it? Why is he feeling for that? And a lot of times you will see, and this is a little bit of a trade-specific thing, you will see that people who are always carrying their weapon, they keep pulling up one side more than the other because it's pulling down on their pants. Right. So if you notice that somebody keeps pulling or favoring or not moving their arm and they don't have a stroke, that one arm is the only part that's not moving and everything else is moving, that's because they're protecting it. Thank you. Very good observation. Yes, sir.
Also, when you extend your hand and he does not extend his hand, that's a lookout right there.
The whole process, his comment was, if you extend your hand and he does not extend his hand, is that what's going on there? The origin of shaking a hand, if you did not know, is because people are right hand dominant and you were showing that you have no weapon and no ill intent. Yes, that's the origin of it. So if you are actually doing that, then that means that you have not drawn the sword, you have no, so I am shaking your hand with no ill intent. So that's, so yeah, does that person not do that? And I would say that if the person is really protecting and holding their side, what is the reason for that? So you're protecting like that. So we have gone through the power of hello. We have learned these skills. We have put these pieces together. So how much money is it that we were looking at getting? In fiscal year 2022, $250.15 million were available in general, with nonprofit security having 125. In 2023, there was 152 million specific for nonprofit security grant, with 305 million total. And in 2024, there was 227.25 million with 454 million total. Now, in November of 24, there was an election. In 2025, we dropped back down to 274.5 million. The goal was to cut that money in half. And they stated that in something called Project 2025. There is a website called Project 2025 Tracker that you all can go to, anybody can go to. In this Project 2025 Tracker, there is a particular thing that years ago listed as in progress. I don't know the current status right now. I did not look at it yesterday. But it will tell you which programs this government with DOGE and things like that is trying to cut back money on. It will tell you exactly what is being done in order to save money and cut back on stuff. Project 2025, if you had not heard about it, is basically to turn back, set back, revert back to where we were with even more struggle years ago. And that is what this shows us. So our job, as I talked about earlier, is to not focus on African Methodist Episcopal listed out like that, but to play their game and say AME. It is not to say that we are a community of color that is being targeted, but to say that we are victims of crime. Y'all do your homework. You got to figure it out. There's even a specific initiative in order to work against urban areas that are needing funding. So just let them look up the address. So have them do that. Our security begins with you, every single one of you. I want you to think about and put in the names of the people who have these skills. I want you to identify who it is that you would go to. If that person is acting funky and we don't know what's going on, who is the next person that you would talk to? Put their name on that piece of paper. Identify a primary and a secondary, because when they're out of town visiting somebody, you got to know who your other person is to go to. Develop your plan. Don't just think about it. Put the names on that piece of paper. It will lower your insurance. It will give you protection. It will give the pastor, the presiding elder, the bishop, every single one of you all, it will reduce your liability because you have something in place. Coordinate with the local resources. The question came up yesterday about, do you have a recommendation about how to enhance relationships with the emergency services? Offer the fire department around the corner or the police department an opportunity to come by in order to have a cup of coffee, in order to, with the police, do training here. The configuration for this building is actually excellent because it's so complicated in order to go through. If somebody were to be hiding, whether a burglar or an active shooter situation, you want them to know how to get to the proper person in order to respond to it. So let them come through, offer them the opportunity to do free training so that they can figure out how to navigate through these buildings, how to get up these stairs, where it goes, how to get through. It lets them know that. Coordinate with that person, the PSA, the Protective Security Advisor that you got the email for, CISA Region 9 at cisa.dhs.gov. Determine your funding. What do you need money for? And apply for it. And then once you develop your plan, you're going to practice it. And then just like St. Andrew in Memphis, where you determined, okay, well, somebody who has mobility issues, they can't get out this door because there's stairs, because this path does not work. And what happens when the power goes out and you can't use the elevator? What is your backup plan? So once you've determined all of that and you have said, we have practiced it and we know that this doesn't work, and then you change it and say, okay, well, we're going to take you out this direct door, sir, because this is going to be our better way to get out to it. And your spot is going to be right out here on the street because that's where we can get to the car. Then that is your new plan. That old one didn't work. So we're going to practice it and be prepared. Not paranoid, but prepared, because we know that we actually are victims of some of this. You've gone through and you've learned about all of the different locations and the statistics on it. It's not paranoid when it's real, but I want you to be prepared for it. All right? This is an example of one of the intelligence reports and how I kind of sift through, and I don't pass everything to you. This one is a little bit of a dated one, unclassified, for official use only, but it talked about heightened threats from homegrown violent extremists during Ramadan. Ramadan is a holy time of Islam, and Ramadan is, I'd say it's probably equivalent in importance to probably how we have with Christmas with us, but it's more like an Easter thing. So they're fasting for the 40 days. Well, during this time, they said in response to what happened in New Orleans with driving down Bourbon Street and mowing people down, that the foreign terrorist organizations were calling for people saying, we want you who are sympathetic, we want you who understand and appreciate these principles to go out and take out Christians and Jewish people. So they were not actually saying these people are jihadists, these people are members of ISIS or Islamic State, but they said, if you like what we're doing, we want you to go out and do this. So it's the same kind of thing with Dylann Roof. Dylann Roof was not a member of a specific white nationalist extremist organization. He's what we call a lone wolf. So they called for him to do it, and that incredible individual went out there and did that and attacked our people, but it's hard to track one because they aren't communicating to somebody else. Unless they post their manifesto, unless they put it on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, you can't find them until it's either done or about to be happening right at that last moment. So I looked through and I determined, I was like, hey, we don't want to get people overly cautious. I don't want people going out there and hating the brothers and sisters of Islam, of Elijah Muhammad or Prophet Muhammad or whomever. I don't want people to go out and say all these people are bad, because they aren't. But the extremists are bad, and these people are calling for attacks against us. So I have to sift through that information. And that's what we do at Global Security. And I thank you all for your attention. If you need to contact me, you can use this. You can take a photo of this. I have the QR code version also. But reach out to me. Let me know what's going on. Let me know how I can help. Reach out to me and say, hey, we want you to come out here and do something in San Francisco. And I'll come out here. I will be out here. I will help you train. I will help you get your plans together. I don't want this to be the only time that I'm visiting any part of the 5th District. I want us to get all of it taken care of. I want to get us all trained up and all ready and understand our laws and limitations and what we can do and how we need to fix it. And if you all have any questions, please please let me know. I'm going to leave that slide up there, actually, because a couple of y'all are doing it. The only other slide I have says questions. So please let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'm going to let you all have the rest of your day since we're late getting out of here. But I thank you all.
Was this valuable today? Amen. Amen. Come on, let's give Brother Aku another hand. Questions, I think if we can codify those per church and work through your pastor, and then we'll work with our elder to see how we want to kind of get those questions funneled up. We'll do that way. I have a few announcements I want to give you before you go and before we hear from our elder before we leave this place. One is that we do have lunch available for you on today, and it is a to-go lunch. Please note that it is including chicken salad, that it was to be the best that you've ever had in your life. So please go on ahead and get that. Nextly, those of you that needed to pick up disciplines and did not the last time and have already paid for them, they are still here, and they're waiting for you. So we do have the list of those who have already been paid. If you just go to the office, they'll make sure that they bring those out for you. When you are exiting today, it is possible, because there's a large race happening here in the city, that they're going to begin to do road blockages maybe as you're leaving out today. So please take a look at that and make sure that you follow what it is that you need to do in order to get out to home as quickly as you can. And lastly, again, for those of you in your churches that have not taken care of your registration for this event, Pastor Hood is going to be reaching out to you in order to make sure that that gets taken care of, and so that we can make sure that we're made, our elders made whole on this event. All right? Amen. Let's turn it over now to our presiding elder to hear final words from her. Ma'am.
I just want to say thank you again to you, Brother Aku. This has been invaluable information. Some of it seems like it's common sense, but we don't always have common sense. And so it's good to be reminded. To our former presiding elder, I am always excited when you're in the house. Amen. He's always done a great job, and I am proud to say he is a mentor to me. So I try and lead as, somebody told me you don't have to follow his steps. That's why I follow his steps. I just can't walk in his footprints. It's a big difference. I'll follow his steps, but I cannot be in his footprints. But I want to say thank you to all of you all who attended. You should be getting information. If you attended the first ballot party that the 5th District had last week to talk about the ballot issues and voting, there is going to be another Zoom on tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. It will be coming out in your email. Elections are going to be on June the 2nd, so this is have your ballot with you. It'll be on Zoom, and hopefully they will answer even more questions. Some people came away and said, I still don't know what I should do. Be on the Zoom tomorrow evening at 6:30. Vanessa's going to send it to the pastors. Pastors, please send it to your members, and please announce it tomorrow in church so that we can be on this Zoom to learn more about what's going on with the election and what we can do to ensure, because I didn't know that in California, I learned something on that call, that you all have 60 some odd people running for governor. That is insane to me. But that it's the top 2, and that it could be the top 2 Republicans or Democrats. Well, we don't, nonpartisan. We have preferences of people who have our interest, and we want to be able to vote our interest. Amen. And so please be on the call tomorrow. I want to say thank you to Pastor Williams for hosting, to the wonderful members of Bethel AME who hosted us both days. Amen. And at this time, I think we're done. Does anybody else have anything? Amen. So I'm going to ask Reverend Brookins, would you close us in prayer, Dr. Brookins?
Thank you, Presiding Elder. Yes. Let us pray. Most gracious and eternal God, we thank you, we praise you, we magnify you. We thank you, God, for allowing us to gain wisdom in all our getting, get an understanding. And so we thank you now for our Presiding Elder Anderson, and our training. I thank you for Dr. Cornwell for the training. And I thank you, God, that you've allowed us to arrive safely and to get what we need to get. And now, God, as we leave this place, but never from your sight, I ask that you would guide us, protect us, keep us, and allow the angels of the Lord to escort us safely from this place to our destination. We also want to bless Bethel AME Church and this wonderful pastor and first lady and the members for all that they've done to show us hospitality. So we say thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.